Boa tarde a todos. Nosso último dia aqui do Seminário Internacional da ABSpk. Por último, mas não menos importante, deixamos aqui essa novidade, que é o lançamento da rede latino-americana de proteção contra incêndio, a PCI LATAM. Estamos aqui, né, na tela, já estão vendo nossos queridos amigos e presidentes das associações latino-americanas que compõem essa rede. Inicialmente, os fundadores, cofundadores dessa rede que vem sendo discutida há bastante tempo. Vamos falar um pouquinho mais sobre ela mais para frente, mas eu gostaria de, pelo menos, inicialmente, dar as boas-vindas a todos. Então, amigos, bem-vindos a nosso Seminário Internacional. Como eu apresentei agora, a rede latino-americana para nossos colegas brasileiros. Y vamos a hablar un poquito de la red y también de los hechos de cada uno de nuestros países, como saben. Bienvenidos.
Muchas gracias.
Bom, amigos, é o seguinte, eu vou começar aqui pela ABSpk, né, como anfitrião do evento. Qual que é a ideia? Eu fiz uma pergunta para cada um deles, e apresentando Alex Rodrigues, presidente da AMRACI na Colômbia, Juan Camacho, presidente da AMRACI no México, Associação Mexicana de Rociadores, Sprinklers. Estamos aqui também com Edward Brito, presidente da Associação Dominicana de Proteção contra Incêndio. Victor, que acaba também de entrar aqui na plataforma, representando a CONAPSE, né, que é a Associação de Proteção contra Incêndio, né, um conglomerado de associações e profissionais, não só sprinklers, no México. O nosso FONACI aqui no Brasil, por exemplo, que em breve também comporá a rede latino-americana. E Carlos Moretti, como presidente da rede latino-americana. Então muito bem-vindos, amigos. E a pergunta que eu faço, introdutória aqui, desde a criação de cada uma dessas associações, qual foram, né, os principais feitos, as principais realizações e como que elas contribuíram para o avanço da proteção contra incêndio, principalmente no foco de proteção por sprinklers, em cada um dos seus países. Eu vou começar aqui pela ABSpk. Eu tomaria o tempo, acho que, de todo o painel, se eu fosse falar de tantas coisas que a gente já fez aqui, assim como os nossos amigos, mas eu posso dizer que na ABSpk, nosso principal feito, na minha opinião, foram as ações voltadas à educação, né? Então, esse seminário é um grande exemplo disso, mais uma conquista da nossa querida associação, mas já tivemos nessa história 3 edições de congressos internacionais, uma série de treinamentos presenciais realizados de NFPA 13, de NFPA 20, de NFPA 25, 3 webinários nessa nova fase, nessa nova realidade de trabalhando em casa, de pandemia, e também outros projetos que aconteceram ao longo da história da associação nesses quase 10 anos, né? No começo de 2021, a gente completará 10 anos e foram muitas realizações. Como outros projetos, por exemplo, o projeto da extração de sprinklers, de certificação de bicos. Quem visitar o stand da IFSA, nessa nossa plataforma, poderá ver que aquele vídeo foi constituído muito dos resultados dos sprinklers não certificados e extraídos em 2 localidades do estado de São Paulo e submetidos a testes. Então, esse é mais um projeto. Ou seja, a gente trabalha para fomentar a utilização da tecnologia, do sistema de sprinklers, educar os usuários desse sistema, proprietários, clientes finais, educar a cadeia produtiva, ou seja, os profissionais. Muitos de vocês que estão assistindo aí já devem ter participado dessas atividades nossas, como educação dessa cadeia produtiva dos profissionais da área. E também a gente trabalha para que essa corrente, essa rede de associados da ABSpk seja cada vez mais forte, cada vez mais represente o setor em nosso país. E agora vamos ouvir um pouquinho de cada um desses países, como que foram. Então, Juan, vamos falar um pouco, então, como está em México, quais foram as principais hechos de la asociación y qué provecho y qué, qué pasó después de todo eso en México en estos, creo que casi 8 o 9 años también de asociación, ¿sí?
Así es, Felipe. ¿Puedo hablar en español?
Por favor, despacio,
Gracias.
pero sí, hables en español.
Okay.
Sería mucho pedir para hablar en portugués, creo. No sé.
Bien, gracias. Han sido retos importantes, así como lo comentaste tú. Hemos trabajado en la educación del sector, en la educación de los profesionales del diseño y la instalación de sistemas de rociadores, y generamos una certificación con reconocimiento oficial en México de los diseñadores. Esto en el tema de educación, al igual que Brasil, hemos trabajado en ese eje, le llamamos nosotros. Otro eje en el que hemos trabajado es en el de regulación o normalización con las autoridades. Hemos empujado para que se generen normas de cómo deben de ser diseñados e instalados los sistemas de rociadores, y actualmente estamos trabajando para que estas normas se vuelvan obligatorias en códigos de construcción o reglamentos de construcción y en otras normas que rigen la protección contra incendio en México. Entonces, llevamos dos ejes, el de profesionalización y el de regulación. Y hay un tercer eje, al igual que comentas tú, igual que Brasil, nosotros le llamamos visibilidad, de que los usuarios finales nos vean, y también una comunicación con el usuario final para decirle, para enseñarle cómo debe de pedir los sistemas de rociadores, los sistemas de protección contra incendio. Entonces, en estos tres ejes, pues hemos generado personas certificadas, hemos generado un estándar para que estas personas se certifiquen, una norma de sistemas de rociadores, y estamos trabajando para que estas normas se incluyan en reglamentos, se incluyan en otras leyes y poderlas hacer de forma obligatoria. Y contribuimos junto con CONAPSI, que en un momento Víctor lo podrá explicar más, en una campaña nacional de prevención y protección contra incendios. También ya llevamos 6 años haciendo esta campaña y hemos logrado que las autoridades de los 3 niveles de gobierno que hay en México se vayan involucrando y tomen conciencia del tema de la protección contra incendios. También hemos logrado que algunos organismos que tienen que certificar productos, que tienen que certificar algunos procesos, se interesen más en la protección contra incendio, y actualmente estamos viendo un empuje de estos organismos por certificar productos, ya que hemos trabajado en la obligatoriedad del rociador, que todavía no lo logramos, en el dónde deben de estar los rociadores, en el cómo, ese también, ese ya lo logramos, el cómo deben de ser los rociadores, los sistemas de rociadores, el quién, también lo hemos logrado, quién debe diseñar, pero nos falta el qué, o sea, los productos, las características que deben de tener. Y si bien en México la mayoría de los productos que se comercializan, sobre todo en rociadores, pues cumplen con estar listados por UL o estar aprobados por FM. Queremos proteger a nuestro mercado de que lleguen otros productos que no tuviesen estas certificaciones, y lo vamos a hacer a través de proponer normas que sean exactamente igual que las de UL. Gracias.
Muy bien, Camacho, es importante todo eso y creo, y sí, estoy seguro que en México el trabajo está siendo muy bien hecho y los logros también son posibles de entender. Bom, o Camacho apresentou um pouquinho, né, do que tem passado no México. Muito bom. Agora a gente vai para a próxima, né, associação aí, né, na ordem de criação, de desenvolvimento, né, que a gente tem a IFSA como uma mantenedora no início de cada uma das associações. Foi assim com a ABSpk, foi assim com a AMRACI, e na sequência a nossa irmã colombiana, Alex, de AMRACI. Por favor, Alex, contigo.
Felipe, ¿cómo estás? Buenas tardes para todos. Voy a hablar también en español y voy a tratar de hablar despacio para hacerme entender. Tengo un leve inconveniente hablando muy despacio, entonces es un reto, pero voy a hacerlo porque entiendo que las personas que nos escuchan obviamente tendremos que hablar muy despacio para que nos entiendan. Entonces, pues, buenas tardes para todos. Un saludo grande para toda la comunidad de ABSpk en Brasil, para los colegas que nos acompañan hoy en la mesa, también un saludo grande. Hemos estado muy activos en las últimas semanas, tanto en la red latinoamericana como en nuestros países, en los diferentes eventos. Tuvimos evento en México, Colombia y Brasil en los últimos 2 meses. Y creo que para cada país ha sido un reto interesante el tema de hacer los congresos de manera virtual. Creo que es un éxito, que ha sido un éxito en México, en Colombia, y veo que en Brasil no se queda atrás, ha sido un rotundo éxito. Entonces, felicitaciones por el evento que están llevando a cabo y muchas gracias por invitarnos, por tenernos en cuenta y por permitirnos abrir el micrófono para conversar. De Colombia, pues como mencionó Felipe, Alex Rodríguez, soy el presidente de ANRACI Colombia. Nuestra asociación es, pues salvo la más nueva ahora es dominicana, de nuestro colega Eduardo Brito, pero éramos la asociación más joven de las 3, inicialmente hablando, ahora somos 4 en el equipo. Y Colombia tiene 5 años, cumplimos este año 5 años de habernos fundado, creado, en donde hemos crecido significativamente para hablar de nuestro mercado. Obviamente las asociaciones en México y Brasil son mucho más grandes en función del mercado que tienen. En Colombia estamos hablando de que hemos prácticamente triplicado la cantidad de asociados en estos 5 años, un poco más del triple, que eso ha sido significativo para nuestra gestión. En Colombia hemos tenido la posibilidad de trabajar muy de la mano con el gobierno y con ciertas instituciones para poder desarrollar algunas iniciativas desde la perspectiva de la prevención y desde la perspectiva de la filosofía y de la cultura de la prevención contra incendios. Es así como trabajamos con el SENA, que es el Servicio Nacional de Aprendizaje. Es un organismo a nivel nacional que se encarga de generar la formación de competencias laborales de las personas, en el cual hemos desarrollado ya varias normas de competencia laboral para nuestros técnicos en inspección, prueba y mantenimiento, en sistemas a prueba de agua y en instalación. En este momento ya estamos certificando las primeras promociones de técnicos. El interés claramente es profesionalizar cada día más las personas que nos dedicamos a la industria de la protección contra incendio en nuestro país y en la región. Y ha sido una tarea bastante compleja, pero interesante. Adicionalmente, hemos trabajado ya de la mano con el Ministerio de Ambiente y Vivienda, en donde desarrollamos algunos proyectos en conjunto y nos han encargado la labor de hacer ya unos estudios en función de determinar la utilización de las sustancias agotadoras de la capa de ozono como extinción de incendios. Y hemos hecho un estudio muy interesante en conjunto con una universidad colombiana que se llama la Universidad EAN, y fue bastante interesante para el gobierno pues tener la idea de toda esta información a nivel estadística. Adicionalmente hemos tenido la oportunidad de trabajar con FM Global, con UL, en el desarrollo de ciertas capacitaciones y hemos enfocado mucho nuestros esfuerzos en el tema normativo. En Colombia tenemos una norma que es la NSR 10, y es una norma que viene desde el año 2010, como por el nombre lo dice. Estamos en este momento en la actualización, en la cual contempla la instalación de sistemas de rociadores automáticos y detección alarma en edificaciones, y obviamente es una norma que está en desarrollo, tiene algunas cosas por mejorar, pero tenemos un documento que nos ayuda a trabajar de la mano con los profesionales que trabajamos en esta linda profesión para poder tener cada día las construcciones más seguras en nuestro país. Hemos trabajado también muchísimo en el desarrollo de alianzas estratégicas con diferentes organizaciones, para el caso puntual, bomberos en Bogotá y bomberos en la ciudad de Medellín. Y con bomberos en la ciudad de Medellín tenemos un centro de entrenamiento de protección contra incendios que Felipe tiene la oportunidad de haber conocido, y a través de su trabajo en FM Global nos ha apoyado muchísimo en el centro, en donde tenemos una serie de donaciones de fabricantes a nivel internacional, y tenemos un centro muy interesante para hacer pruebas de todos los equipos de sistemas de rociadores, válvulas de diluvio, válvulas especiales. Tenemos tanque, bombas, y es muy interesante para nosotros, certificante, poder decir que es el primer centro a nivel Latinoamérica que tenemos y con el que contamos para hacer pruebas de este estilo. De otra manera, estamos colaborando hoy por hoy con la red latinoamericana, como menciona Felipe y Carlos, en donde estamos trabajando de la mano para compartir todas estas diferentes retos alcanzados, por decirlo de alguna manera, en pro de poderlos socializar con toda la región. Entonces estamos muy atentos, Felipe y Carlos y todo el equipo, Juan, Edward y Víctor, de poder trabajar conjuntamente y con los demás miembros de asociaciones internacionales, pues, de manera local, para poder llevar todo este conocimiento. Entonces, muchas gracias por tenernos aquí. Creo que se me agotó el tiempo y no quiero pasar un poco más allá. Muy amables, y estamos aquí dispuestos a colaborar y a compartir con ustedes en todo lo que desde Colombia hemos hecho y podamos colaborar. Gracias, Felipe.
Muchas gracias, Alex. Yo conozco el centro de los bomberos de Medellín, y sí, es una buenísima instalación, buenísima centro de pruebas. Bom, amigos, como Alex apresentou aqui, e o Juan um pouquinho antes, somos as associações aí que viemos a ajudar a disseminar essa necessidade de que outras associações viessem pela Latinoamérica, né? Então, nasceu com a educação, sempre a educação está forte em qualquer uma dessas nossas associações. Depois, a certificação, o México implantou muito bem, tem trazido muito sucesso lá no México. O Brasil, a ABSpk, também com uma ajuda e uma parceria da AMRACE, começou o desenvolvimento de uma certificação também nacional de projetistas aqui, ainda em desenvolvimento, e ver essa pandemia tá um pouco mais devagar do que a gente imaginava, né? Podemos dizer que está em hold, está parado nesse momento de pandemia. O Alex e a AMRACE na Colômbia também seguindo no mesmo caminho, e eu tive a oportunidade, algumas vezes que eu estive na Colômbia, várias vezes, por sinal, nos últimos 2 anos e meio, a conhecer o que eles têm sido feitos, participei de treinamento, de palestras. Esse centro de treinamento que eles desenvolveram lá é de ponta, sensacional, junto com o Bombeiro de Medellín, no centro, na organização do Bombeiro de Medellín mesmo, em parceria com eles, é muito legal. Já participei, já acompanhei treinamentos lá. E na sequência, como o Alex falou, outras pessoas, e nosso amigo Edward, que está aqui com a gente, eu tive a oportunidade de conhecer o Edward no Panamá, na primeira vez que eu tive contato com essas associações latino-americanas. Edward, desde lá viramos um grande amigo, ele sempre está em todos os eventos aí, onde possível, né? Inclusive no Brasil, né, Edward? E ele no Brasil não, a gente esteve na Colômbia. No Brasil acho que o Edward não conseguiu vir, infelizmente, mas ele levou esse conceito, batalhou fortemente para que a República Dominicana também entrasse nessa linha e também buscasse essa regulação, disseminamento de conhecimento, porque a gente sabe, a gente está buscando aqui, né, os logros, né, as conquistas, como eles disseram, de tudo isso que a gente vem implantando há muitos anos. Então, Eduardo, o mais novo irmão aqui das nossas associações fundadoras da rede latino-americana. Eduardo, por favor, contigo a palavra. Cuéntenos un poco de cómo está en República Dominicana, cómo han hecho por ahí.
Muy buenas tardes, ¿verdad? Es hora allá. Bueno, Felipe, muchas gracias por la invitación a través de la red latinoamericana de protección contra incendio, invitarme a mi persona en la Asociación Dominicana de Protección contra Incendio de la República Dominicana. Mi nombre es Eduardo Brito, soy presidente de dicha asociación, y creemos que somos los más privilegiados porque, aunque somos los más jóvenes, antes era Colombia, estamos aprendiendo de cada una de las formaciones, tanto de México como Brasil y ahora Colombia. Bueno, sí, Felipe, te prometí que este año estaría en tu congreso, pero lamentablemente la pandemia no fue posible. Esperamos para el próximo año.
Estás en nuestro congreso virtual.
Virtual. Es correcto, pero la próxima tiene que ser presencial. Bueno, Felipe, como habías introducido, nuestro primer logro como asociación es habernos conformado. Después de varios años de batalla y con el apoyo de mi buen amigo Víctor Espinola, al final tuvimos un hijo y este hijo se llama la Asociación Dominicana de Proteción contra Incêndio. Lamentablemente fue todo este año y fruto de la pandemia, nuestros logros fueron muy minimizados, pero sí ya proyectado a lo que será el año 2021 y enfocado en dos pilares, dos líneas primordiales. Una es trabajar con el Ministerio de Obra Pública, que es quien nos regula el reglamento que se llama R032, que es de protección contra incendio y seguridad. Un reglamento que ha sufrido desde el 2012, que fue promulgado, varios cambios y proyección a implementarse a través de intereses que han llegado que el reglamento no se ha aplicado. Y creo que nosotros, donde tenemos mucho trabajo, es ahí. El reglamento también sufrió muchos cambios debido a que los intereses empresariales veían que en su primera aparición del reglamento en el 2012 era muy estricto con la protección. A través de los años sufrieron cambios que fueron flexibilizados. Queremos volver a la posición anterior y eso creo que lo podemos lograr a través de la asociación y interactuando con el Ministerio de Obra Pública para que pueda conjuntos llegar a un acuerdo y ver la protección como un incendio, no como un gasto, sino como una necesidad para proteger las vidas humanas, una necesidad para proteger los bienes materiales y reincorporación en muy corto tiempo a su vida cotidiana de trabajo. Otro de los puntos que queremos trabajar en segundo plano para este 2021 y lo que hemos ido enfocado, que es una debilidad no deja de ser importante, es trabajar con la capacitación y apoyo al cuerpo de bomberos. Nuestro cuerpo de bomberos, segregado en todo el país, tiene mucha debilidad de inspección. Podemos llegar a una industria y que puede abrir sus operaciones y el cuerpo de bomberos no tiene la capacidad en algunas áreas de dar una certificación de que sí puede cumplir, que cumple con los procedimientos de seguridad y puede entrar en operación. Entonces creo que nuestra fortaleza para brindarle a los cuerpos de bomberos es apoyarlos con capacitaciones de análisis de riesgo e inspecciones de toda la industria en República Dominicana antes de que pueda aperturarse al público, ya sea para trabajos o para visitantes. Entonces, estos son los dos pilares que creemos más importantes en realizar. Estamos también inmersos en proyectar, si es posible, si tenemos en 2021 una salida con la pandemia, es hacer nuestro primer congreso y ya ser unido junto con el apoyo de cada uno de ustedes, poder tener nuestro primer congreso, ojalá sea presencial, algo que se estuvo haciendo a través de otras instituciones, pero ya tiene varios años y dejaban sus frutos. Creo que es ahí donde debemos nosotros enfocar. Entonces son 3 puntos importantes: nuestro reglamento, nuestro cuerpo de bomberos y un congreso que queremos llegar, porque realmente el congreso retroalimenta. Hay personas que en el congreso es que se dan cuenta de lo necesario, de lo importante de que es tener sus instalaciones bien protegidas, con rociadores, con un sistema contra incendio eficiente, confiable, que le pueda asegurar la vida de ellos y la de los demás. Bueno, creo que sí, los 5 minutos salieron. Agradecido nuevamente de esta invitación, Felipe, y a cada uno de los amigos en las diferentes asociaciones, compartir con ustedes cada uno de ellos. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Eduardo. Es contento de escuchar que las cosas están aconteciendo en República Dominicana y que los objetivos, estoy seguro que todos los objetivos serán completados, acontecerán en poco tiempo. Este año es un año complicado, difícil, diferente. Espero que próximo año estaremos todos juntos nuevamente y los hechos, los logros de las asociaciones vuelvan con fuerza. Amigos, apresentamos aqui as associações irmãs latino-americanas. O que acho que não foi falado, a ANRACI na Colômbia nasceu como uma associação de sprinklers, e com o tempo ela visualizou que caberia, por falta de existência, né, de outras associações da área de proteção contra incêndio, incorporar outras disciplinas também dentro da ANRACI. Então, hoje ela não é uma associação somente de rociadores, de sprinklers, mas ela também contempla outras disciplinas. No México, a ANRACI continua sendo uma associação de sprinklers, mas ela também visualizou algum tempo atrás que tinha essa deficiência e foi constituída também com a ajuda do Victor e com a ajuda dos presidentes que a ANRACI já teve, o Carlos Moretti, lá no início, o Fausto e o Camacho mesmo, que a necessidade de se unir às diversas disciplinas, como estamos fazendo no Brasil agora com a criação do FONASSE. Então, o Victor está aqui representando o CONAPSE, representando o Davi Morales, que infelizmente não pôde comparecer, que é o presidente do CONAPSE. Victor, como estás?
Felipe, buenas tardes. Contento de estar.
Buenas tardes. Cuéntanos un poco de CONAPSE, cómo están las cosas y dónde surgió la idea y las perspectivas también de CONAPSE, porque estamos aquí, es un seminario de rociadores, pero lo que queremos es evitar las tragedias, evitar los incendios, evitar las muertes, y no lograremos si no con la unión de las otras medidas de protección contra incendio también. Y CONAPSE empezó algunos años en esta idea. Cuéntenos un poco.
Sí, seguro. Primero, gracias por la invitación. Muy contento de estar aquí. Hace un par de años me hicieron favor de invitarme, pero un tema de salud me impidió acompañarlos. Si no me recuerdo, fue en Río de Janeiro, no recuerdo, pero es un placer estar con ustedes. Y yo quisiera compartir con nuestros asistentes el hecho de que CONAPSE es Consejo Nacional de Protección contra Incendio y nace como la necesidad de representar a toda la industria, en particular en nuestra región latinoamericana. El problema es que, a diferencia en otros países, cuando te presentas como una especialidad y dices, soy la Asociación Mexicana de Rociadores Automáticos, ante la autoridad, ellos piensan que estás tratando de vender un producto en lugar de establecer medidas de prevención y protección contra incendio que realmente salvan vidas y que está comprobado desde hace más de un siglo, ¿no? Y a partir de ahí decidimos en ANRACI crear esta nueva organización para tener representatividad ante la industria, ante el gobierno, y con ello tener más voz para buscar como estrategia insertar primero una imagen que trabaja en la prevención, que no promueve ninguna tecnología, sino acciones de prevención, y como estrategia vamos hablando del rociador como el elemento principal que salva vidas. A partir de allí, lo que hemos hecho es que este consejo está integrado por todos los miembros de ANRACI, desde luego, pero también invitamos a los cuerpos de bomberos, a la misma autoridad del gobierno mexicano, a las aseguradoras como un papel importante dentro de la cadena de la industria de protección contra incendio, a colegios de arquitectos, de ingenieros, de asesores, de consultores en protección civil, y con esto nos hemos convertido a 3 años de su organización en un órgano de consulta para el gobierno mexicano, y esto nos permite empujar las iniciativas de AMRASI en temas de normas específicas para rociadores, alarma y protección, alarma y detección, protección pasiva y todas las especialidades. Esto también apuntalando el tema de la profesionalización, promoviendo a los especialistas, hablando con los usuarios, con quien contrata los servicios de los especialistas, y desde luego empujando a darle mayor visibilidad al tema de fuego. La campaña nacional de prevención que comentaba Juan se ha convertido en una bandera de AMRASI, de CONAPSI, y nos da más visibilidad, y entonces puedes hablar de temas específicos de regulación o la falta de regulación y los impactos que tiene el no tener esa regulación en los impactos que tienen que ver con los incendios económicos, sociales, en pérdidas de vidas humanas, en los costos asociados a la atención médica. Y esto nos ha llevado a presentar la iniciativa de la creación del Día Nacional de la Prevención de Incendios, que nos da visibilidad ante el gobierno y ante los usuarios. Entonces, esta herramienta del Consejo nos ha permitido 2 cosas fundamentales. Ser la voz de la industria completa, ser un órgano de consulta para el gobierno y tener voz ante las cámaras industriales para hablar del tema de seguridad como un tema importante en la generación de competitividad y de ahorros para su sector. Entonces, esto nos sirve como una sombrilla para empujar el tema de rociadores. Y nos ha dado resultados muy positivos en 3 años. ¿No? Y finalmente, para darle entrada a Carlos, es compartir esa experiencia. Nos ha dado la oportunidad de conocer buenos amigos en Brasil, en Colombia, en Dominicana, en Panamá, en Costa Rica, y la historia esa la contará Carlos, pero tenemos los mismos problemas. En Brasil es muy similar porque somos la región latinoamericana y tenemos los mismos problemas, son muy similares, con las mismas carencias, y por eso es que estamos hoy reunidos aquí y uniendo a la región en esta red latinoamericana.
Es verdad, Víctor, y conozco a Víctor hace algunos años allá. Desafortunadamente, Víctor, cuando no puede venir para Brasil, creo que en Río, no me acuerdo si Río, pero el último congreso en Atibaia, ¿no? estaba con un problema personal. En Brasil estamos con el FONASI, que es el Fórum de Protección contra Incêndio, la misma idea que ustedes con CONAPSI. Yo voy a introducir a Carlos primeramente en portugués y ya paso para ti, Carlos.
Bien,
então, amigos, mais um exemplo aqui de que essa união é importante. O que o Victor colocou aqui é que essas empresas foram nascendo inicialmente com uma ideia maior da IFSA, né, International Fire Suppression Alliance, de trazer para países onde as necessidades são comuns, de melhora na regulação, melhora na educação, melhora nas normas, a criação de associações. Então nasceu a ABSpk, depois veio no México, depois veio na Colômbia, República Dominicana, tem várias outras nascendo que muito em breve já estarão junto com nós dentro da PCI LATAM. E aqui no Brasil, seguindo o exemplo do México, que é muito bem sucedido com o CONAPSI, uma voz mais forte, porque o Victor tem plena razão de dizer que quando a gente vai como a ABSpk, seja como a BPP, seja como a BINI, a Bichama, a ABX, que quer que seja, representando uma classe, uma linha de sistema, uma medida de proteção, muitas vezes pode soar que a gente está querendo favorecer a nós mesmos, mercadologicamente. E não é isso. É claro que tem o ganho de mercado também, mas a gente quer proteger, a gente quer educar, a gente quer que tenha um Brasil com menos incêndios, com menos mortes, com menos perdas patrimoniais. Então, há 2 anos, mais ou menos, começou a conversa do FONASSE. O FONASSE vem aí. O FONASSE ainda não é uma instituição legalmente formada com CNPJ, é uma junção de 12 entidades hoje, nessas associações, como mencionei, e algumas outras, para que a gente comece a ter uma voz ativa, representando a indústria de proteção contra incêndio como um todo. Com ajuda também à Frente Parlamentar Mista de Segurança contra Incêndio, que acontece junto ao Congresso Nacional, junto aos deputados que presidem a frente, mas a gente não depender somente de lá e a gente poder avançar e poder representar o setor. E depois, a partir dessa rede de associações e de amizade, como o Vitor colocou, né, bastante tempo que a gente se conhece, já estivemos juntos em vários congressos, né, já partilhamos de muita experiência nesses congressos juntos, né, todos esses que estão aqui com vocês. Nasceu há alguns anos a ideia de se criar uma rede única, não substituindo qualquer associação, não é essa a ideia, mas uma rede que a gente possa, de alguma maneira, trazer uma voz para toda a Latinoamérica, que tem particularidades de cada país, sim, porém temos muitos problemas em comum entre esses discutidos aqui, a falta de educação, de regulamento, de normas locais. Então, trago com vocês agora o Carlos Moretti, que é o nosso presidente da rede latino-americana, PCI LATAM, né, anos conversando a respeito. O ano passado começou a sair do papel e, efetivamente, agora, esse ano, o lançamento oficial aconteceu no México, a final de setembro, começo de outubro. Segunda etapa do lançamento em grande estilo, né? Porque tanto tempo planejando. Vamos fazer em 3 etapas e aqui hoje a gente traz a terceira etapa desse lançamento, depois de México, Colômbia. Então, Carlos, seja bem-vindo. Bienvenido, Carlos. Contigo la palabra. Queremos escuchar las perspectivas, la idea, por qué la red latinoamericana y cómo funcionará la red de ahora en adelante. Por favor,
muy amable,
Carlos.
Gracias, Felipe. Muchas gracias por la invitación. Gracias a todos los que están conectados. Definitivamente, pues, somos países hermanos con problemas similares, y bueno, todos vamos avanzando en un sentido. Vamos logrando ciertas cosas, ciertas asociaciones, y bueno, ¿qué es lo que buscamos? Pues un efecto, lograr que esa suma con la sinergia se multiplique para el resto de los países latinoamericanos, ¿no? Trabajar en conjunto, las diferentes asociaciones, principalmente en un tema prioritario, ¿no? Porque sin este tema prioritario, pues podemos hacer muchas cosas, pero si no logramos que la regulación se unifique, que se haga similar en todo lo que es América, porque pues es el mismo problema en todos lados, y aquí manejamos del lado izquierdo y no del derecho, y bueno, tenemos que aprender de la historia, de que bueno, pues si no nos unimos en un mismo sentido, pues creamos diferentes voltajes, diferentes complicaciones, y aquí pues estamos hablando de salvar vidas y propiedades y de algo que no puede fallar, ¿verdad? Entonces tiene que ser muy claro hacia dónde vamos y tiene que estar todo muy unificado y muy basado en la experiencia y en la historia. La historia, pues, desgraciadamente, como vamos a ver ahora en los próximos videos, pues la experiencia de los cambios en la regulación se van dando a través de las tragedias, de los grandes incendios. Y bueno, entendamos, ¿no? Todos los días, igual que con la pandemia, no en número tan grande, ¿verdad? Pero sí, igual que en la pandemia, todos los días existen incendios y pérdidas tremendas. Mucha gente muere y no lo vemos porque, bueno, pues son aislados, son foquitos aislados, foquitos de Navidad que no nos dan un reflector en las noticias, a excepción de esos grandes incendios. Y pongamos un poco de perspectiva. Los incendios representan mayor número de muertes y daños materiales, de pérdidas, de clausura de negocios, de pérdida de negocios, de desaparición de familias, de mucha gente que muere, mucho mayor que los sismos y los huracanes de forma combinada. O sea, sismos, un evento aislado, fuerte, noticias, huracanes, evento aislado. Bueno, esas dos cosas, si las sumamos, no causan tanto daño ni tantas muertes como los incendios. Entonces, bueno, pues esto ha sido a través de la historia, ¿va? La historia, como lo vamos a ver en el video de Ross Fleming, pues desde hace miles de años, ya miles, ¿va? Pues he ido trabajando en resolverlo. Y bueno, se ha organizado. Aquí tenemos ya liderazgo desde hace muchos años, principalmente de Estados Unidos, y experiencia con más de algunos 185 años como FM Global, más de 100 años como UL, NFPA, y todos los fabricantes de productos certificados y aprobados que representan la IPSA, pues tenemos que abrir los ojos para que aprovechemos y aprendamos de ellos, de la historia, de esas grandes tragedias y que no vuelvan a pasar. Entonces, no tenemos que enfrentar estas tragedias, no reinventemos la rueda, vamos a tratar de, pues obviamente, aprender de esto. Entendamos que hoy nada ni nadie está seguro o preservado si no aprendemos de esa historia y aplicamos la ciencia, las normas y estándares hechos por profesionales y con productos certificados y aprobados. Y obviamente instalaciones bien hechas. Entonces, hay mucho camino andado. Entendamos que somos iguales en el mundo entero. Los incendios no conocen fronteras. Es el mismo problema exactamente en todos lados. Y se construye en el mundo entero de forma muy similar. Y obviamente, pues cada día se usan materiales sintéticos pues más flamables, ¿no? Entonces, la gran diferencia es, considero yo, que desgraciadamente es que a veces no aprendemos de esa historia, de esa historia, y que no valoramos tanto la vida ni las consecuencias de no prevenir. Entonces, aquí, bueno, en México ahí tenemos una canción, ¿cuánto vale la vida? Y pues la canción dice, pues la vida no vale nada. Pues no, en algunos países no vale mucho, ¿verdad? O no vale nada, en otros sí, mucho, y muchos se autovaloran, nos autovaloramos nosotros mismos, y nuestros gobiernos nos valoran, ¿verdad? Algunas autoridades, como ellos regulan, bueno, no regulan el riesgo, sino que simplemente dejan que las cosas sucedan, y luego hay consecuencias tremendas que, bueno, ya lo veremos en los videos, impactan a todos, y lo vemos como el último reciente, pues el de Beirut, ¿verdad? Que pues, destruye una de las ciudades más antiguas del mundo por una falta de prevención, una falta de no hacer lo correcto bien y en el momento adecuado para que esto se prevenga, ¿no? Entonces, donde sí se valora la vida, pues la vida vale pues entre 1 millón y 8, ¿no? En nuestros países latinoamericanos, pues a lo mejor mucho menos, ¿verdad? Ahí son los seguros, pero sin embargo, pues todos tenemos que entender que para alguien, cada uno de nosotros somos la persona más valiosa e importante en el mundo. Para nuestros padres, nuestros hijos, nuestra familia, para alguien somos la gente más valiosa. Por eso es importante que pues tomemos conciencia, ¿no? Especialmente hoy que traemos este problema tremendo de pandemia en el que un estornudo nos puede matar al vecino, ¿no? Y pues hay que tomar acciones. Entonces, la vida es muy frágil, hay que hacer lo que se debe hacer y pues nuestras acciones van a impactar igual que todo, ¿no? La pandemia, pues ya vimos, ya surge la vacuna, la pandemia va a pasar, los incendios no van a pasar, o sea, no han pasado, ¿no? A excepción de que hagamos algo, ¿no? Entonces, tengamos un poquito de perspectiva, ¿no? Los incendios, o sea, en base a las pérdidas que se dan a nivel mundial, representan el 1% del Producto Interno Bruto. El 1%, o sea, cada 100 años se vuelve a reconstruir todo porque se destruye cuando no se previene, ¿no? Obviamente antes representaban más, otros países pues han logrado disminuir y se han disminuido los fallecimientos, las muertes, pero hoy se estima que pues hay 200,000 vidas anuales que se pierden y 1% del Producto Interno Bruto es una cantidad enorme. Y pues se pueden prevenir de muchas formas, ¿no? Digo, simplemente un detector de humo, un extintor en tu casa, cosas que cuestan casi nada, menos de $100, pocos lo tenemos. ¿Cuántos de nosotros vivimos en un edificio alto sin ningún tipo de sistema de protección contra incendio que van a ser trampas de muerte en el caso que sucede un incendio? Entonces, entendamos que vamos a poner las cosas en perspectiva. Esto, pues en el mundo se instalan 250 millones de rociadores anualmente. Pero en Latinoamérica solamente se instalan 2.5 millones de rociadores. Solamente el 1% en una región que tiene el 8% de la población mundial y que produce el 8% del Producto Interno Bruto del mundo. Entonces, ¿qué quiere decir? Bueno, pues no estamos aprendiendo de los errores de otros, de la prevención que están logrando otros, no estamos aprendiendo de pues los otros que por algo lo instalan, ¿no? Y esta solución, pues, tiene 170 años, ¿no? Y pues se usa en todos lados mucho más que en nuestro país, en nuestros países. Entonces, entendamos que los otros que sí saben, que sí ven el efecto de prevenir, pues, como todo, ¿no? Que vemos hoy, los países ricos, donde vive el 17% de la población, donde sí protegen, pues dan el 50% del Producto Interno Bruto. Entonces, ahí tenemos que entender por qué lo hacen, ¿no? Prevenir, pues tiene sus grandes beneficios, ¿no? Y ahí en estos países se utilizan como un elemento esencial de la construcción, igual que se usa el refuerzo de las estructuras en países con problemas sísmicos, ¿verdad? Pues ahí aprendió, se caen, si no lo haces bien se caen. Y bueno, pues es un elemento esencial como puede ser un aire acondicionado en estos países que, bueno, sí hacen lo que se debe hacer. Entonces, pues creo que tenemos algo que aprender en Latinoamérica, ¿no? Entonces, hay mucho que aprender, hay muchos éxitos que se pueden lograr utilizando rociadores porque pues van a reducir las vidas de forma dramática, ¿verdad? Y los daños impresionantemente. Entonces, por 2% que está definido, ¿verdad? Un 2% es lo que te cuesta instalar un sistema de protección contra incendio de rociadores en promedio, eliminas el riesgo al 99.99%. Entonces, pues con 2% eliminas el riesgo, si no, pues vas a perder el edificio, muchas vidas y muchos negocios, ¿no? Entonces, ese es lo que yo veo que podemos hacer mucho, obviamente como red, si todos empujamos en el mismo sentido, si todos aprendemos de los éxitos de los otros, si todos colaboramos, todos alineados vamos a ir hacia un mismo sentido. Y bueno, yo aquí simplemente quisiera darle las gracias. Tenemos que trabajar muy fuerte en lo que es la A de la rociadora, que es la regulación. Y pues aquí pues van a ver, nadie lo puede hacer más que nosotros. Y pues tenemos que unir a más asociaciones, ¿no?
Muy bien, Carlos. Es verdad, estamos solamente empezando con la iniciativa, con el trabajo. Creo que en muy poco tiempo tendremos otras asociaciones que ya están formadas, la argentina, la chilena, la peruana y otras que también ya están con nosotros en muchas actividades. Muy pronto también estarán con nosotros en la red latinoamericana, ¿sí? Obrigado todo mundo. Acho que essa é a ideia, a gente trabalhar em conjunto, a gente não perder iniciativas feitas por qualquer uma dessas associações ou entidades em algum dos nossos países não pode ser perdida, né? Essa é a ideia, que seja compartilhada. Não adianta a gente passar pelo mesmo esforço, no mesmo caminho para chegar num resultado parecido, né? Sendo que alguém já fez. Ou pior, a gente passar pelos mesmos desafios para chegar num resultado que às vezes não é bom, mas que alguém já descobriu que não era bom. Então, para quê? Né? Por isso que a gente precisa estar unido, por isso que a gente precisa trabalhar para uma América, né, Latina melhor, mais protegida e que aprenda com os erros e aprenda com os sucessos de todos nós. Eu vou pedir para o Alex colocar aqui só rapidamente uns slides. Eu não vou passar uma leitura, porque não é a ideia, mas de como nasce a rede PCI LATAM. E aí eu vou pedir licença para o Carlos para ler em português, né? Ele como presidente, mas eu vou fazer esse papel para ler em português, para que todos entendam e acompanhem junto comigo. Carlos, já estamos com a pantalla de la misión, los objetivos. Yo voy a leer en portugués, entonces, perdón, yo tomaré la palabra del presidente, pero solo porque está...
No hablo portugués, adelante, por favor.
En portugués. Todavía no hablas en portugués. Un día, como un gran conocedor del mundo, de los mejores lugares del mundo y de la comida del mundo que yo conozco, yo sé que le gusta mucho. Muy bien, muy bien. Amigos, esse é o material inicial que a gente, como rede latino-americana, desenvolveu em conjunto, e é essa a ideia, né? A gente tem a missão de transformar a forma como enfrentar o problema de incêndio, como o Carlos colocou, aprender com aquilo que passou, né? E aquilo que tem sido feito entre nós. Então, a gente tem essa missão de trazer esse compartilhamento e tornar a proteção contra incêndios uma questão realmente relevante do ponto de vista social, técnico e regulatório em todos os países da América Latina. Alex, por favor, e a visão que a gente quer trazendo isso, ser reconhecido como um agente de mudança, né? A gente poder, com essa união, né, e compartilhando desse conhecimento, dessas boas ações, ser reconhecido, que mais países possam adentrar, mais países possam contribuir, e a gente ser realmente reconhecido como um agente de mudança e fazendo a diferença dentro dos nossos países, dentro da América Latina, sendo assim, evitando que essas notícias que a gente costuma ver todo dia, essas mortes e esses incêndios, esses patrimônios e empresas sendo destruídas, estejam no noticiário comumente, como a gente costuma ver. Essa foto que vocês estão vendo aí foi uma foto tirada o ano passado no evento da NFPA, lá em San Antônio. Ali foi a reunião derradeira do Go Não Go, né? Vamos, e ali se decidiu que estava tudo pronto para ir, constituiu-se, e o Carlos foi eleito, né, unanimemente, assim, na conversa, como esse primeiro presidente da rede latino-americana, e avançamos até onde chegamos hoje, aí, com essa missão e os objetivos bem definidos. E, Alex, por favor. E aqui os objetivos que a gente traçou como iniciais, constantemente eles serão revisados e serão trabalhados, porque a gente espera, como as nossas associações, que a rede latino-americana também possua um mesmo dinamismo e a gente possa fazer essa transformação que a gente está com vontade de fazer, né, com o objetivo de fazer. Então, a gente precisa do dinamismo, mas só para passar rapidamente, a gente vai trabalhar para fortalecer... Alex, por favor, vuelve um pouco dos slides, por favor. Mais uma, por favor. A ideia é fortalecer as leis, a regulação em cada país, compartilhar a experiência, como a gente falou bastante, ter uma rede, um site, um sistema integrado e padronizado para compartilhar essas coisas, investir e incentivar o uso de produtos certificados, né? Creio que no México eles passam por esse problema, na Colômbia passa por problema, no Brasil a gente passa muito por esse problema, todos sabem a falta de produtos certificados e de regulamento para isso. Um portal de treinamento onde a gente possa compartilhar aquilo que já foi desenvolvido, seja por uma de nossas associações, a ABSpk tem muita coisa já, seja também através do que a IFSA, a NFSA também, que é uma associação irmã, e a gente possa compartilhar, traduzir, compartilhar o que já foi criado. A gente poupa esforço aí, ninguém tem a ideia de criar, desenvolver a roda novamente. A gente quer pegar aquilo que foi feito de bom e compartilhar para que isso seja aproveitado. Por favor, o último slide, Alex. E assim, tornar uma certificação de profissionais. A gente precisa educar, mas a gente precisa ter meios também de reconhecer aqueles profissionais, né, e poder utilizar dessa ferramenta, né, que o conhecimento aplicado possa trazer os ganhos. Então, a certificação é um caminho, como o México tem feito muito bem. Uma ideia que a gente tem, e lá no México isso já está acontecendo, de um dia da proteção e prevenção contra incêndios. A gente tem um ideal, um objetivo de desenvolver e criar o Dia Latino-Americano de Prevenção e Proteção contra Incêndio. Por que não um próximo passo, não está aqui ainda, contribuir para que a gente tenha um dia mundial, quem sabe, né? E claro, a gente trabalhar sempre com ética, com transparência, e para isso desenvolver um código de ética e transparência. Eu passei aqui resumidamente pelos objetivos, para não estender demais o tempo. Hoje o dia é longo, tem muito conteúdo, gente. A gente tomou a liberdade até de pular o intervalo. Hoje não teremos o cafezinho. Eu espero que vocês, quando precisarem se ausentar, façam isso de maneira mais rápida para não perder, porque vem bastante coisa legal aí. A gente está esperando, eu não sei se já entrou aqui na plataforma, o Paul da IFSA. Ele deve entrar em breve. A gente vai passar um vídeo agora, que foi gravado.
¿No se escucha? ¿No se está escuchando? Ya.
Cerró el audio.
Perdão. Imagino que eu apertei aqui sem querer o mudo. A gente vai passar para um vídeo agora, né, depois dessa apresentação toda da rede latino-americana, um vídeo que o Russ Fleming teve. A gente teve o privilégio de ter o Russ Fleming gravando, né, aquele que foi o gerente da IFSA por todo o tempo e ajudou no desenvolvimento de todas essas associações que vocês conheceram um pouquinho mais agora. O Russ, que esteve no Brasil diversas vezes apresentando, esteve no Panamá, esteve no México, esteve na Colômbia, estará aqui, infelizmente não pessoalmente, né, nem ao vivo, mas ele gravou esse vídeo contando um pouquinho da história dos regulamentos e o futuro, né, dos códigos de proteção contra incêndio. Eu espero que o vídeo já esteja a ponto de ser colocado aí, Samuel. Me avisa qualquer coisa, já libero para você. E o Paul estará com a gente também na sequência para responder qualquer questão. Depois desse vídeo, a gente também foi agraciado com a participação de vários nomes de peso da indústria, né, de sprinklers, né, de vários fabricantes internacionais, mundiais, vamos dizer assim, de sprinklers e duas certificadoras, né? Teremos representante da UEL, teremos representantes da FM Approvals, também para contar um pouquinho da história, como eles veem o futuro. Então, teremos CEOs e grandes nomes, né, de peso, não é qualquer um ali que está falando, é pessoa que realmente tem conhecimento de causa e que vai poder trazer um pouquinho mais de perspectiva para vocês, profissionais da área que estão nos assistindo agora. Então, eu agradeço aqui a participação dos nossos amigos aqui, latino-americanos. Muchas gracias, Juan, Alex, Víctor, Carlos, y todos los otros también que están con nosotros, Fausto, David, que no. Muchas gracias. Estoy seguro, Edward, perdón, yo no estoy viendo más mi pantalla aquí, pero Edward, que volvemos a hablar muy pronto con los logros de República Dominicana también y de todas las demás asociaciones latinoamericanas. existe un espacio para preguntas aquí en nuestro website. Yo todavía no hay ninguna pregunta y también nuestro tiempo está ahí muy como que cerrado para el video, pero dejo el espacio para las últimas palabras si quieren y después vamos para el video. Carlos, por favor.
Simplemente yo nada más quería invitar a otras asociaciones latinoamericanas en el Caribe, en Centroamérica, en América del Sur, a que nos acompañen a unirse en esta red latinoamericana. Como sabemos, pues siempre la unión pues hace las fuerzas, ¿no? Y la fuerza, y como dice Henry Ford, si caminamos solos tal vez llegaremos más rápido, pero si caminamos acompañados vamos a llegar siempre más lejos y más organizados, ¿no? También quería, pues aprovechando que propusimos la creación del Día de Protección contra Incendio en México, estamos también proponiendo como red latinoamericana el crear el Día Internacional de la Prevención contra Incendio para todo el mundo. Esto lo estamos tratando de hacer de forma conjunta con IPSA y con América Latina y el resto del mundo para crear un símbolo que nos va a unir como una sola bandera para una lucha común. Pues obviamente aliados, vamos a salir adelante y vamos a empujar todos más fuerte en el mismo sentido. Así es que invitamos a todos a que por favor nos ayuden a que esta asociación latinoamericana pues surge de forma ya, digamos, formal ahora, pero arranca por IPSA hace 10 años con Brasil, luego 7 años por Colombia, 7 en México, 5 en Colombia, y bueno, el año pasado en República Dominicana. Entonces, sabemos que hay otras asociaciones hermanas sudamericanas que ya existen. Bueno, pues los invitamos a unirnos, a trabajar en conjunto, a que no reinventemos la rueda, que aprendamos de la historia y que todos unidos vayamos haciendo que las cosas sucedan, ¿no? Entonces, básicamente, les agradezco mucho a toda su participación en este congreso virtual, que ha sido un gran éxito. Mis respetos, esa plataforma nos las tienes que enseñar porque está increíble, o sea, los felicito. Y bueno, otra vez, otro parteaguas, cada vez mejor, México, Colombia y Brasil. Y de eso se trata. La sabiduría colectiva hace que las cosas vayan mejorando de forma mucho más rápida. Entonces, eso es lo que buscamos, multiplicar. Muchas gracias a todos. Con eso concluyo mi participación. Obviamente, pues, adelante los demás.
Es verdad, Carlos. Amigos, eso, la idea es multiplicação, né? A ideia é a multiplicação, como o Carlos aqui conversou, falou muito bem. A gente tem outras associações mexicanas, a argentina, a peruana, a associação chilena, outras várias aí que a gente já teve contato, já conversou e em breve estará junto com a gente. Vamos agora para o vídeo. Ô, Samuel, a gente está com o Paul, me sinalizou aqui que ele estava...
Víctor, quería comentar algo.
Sí, Víctor.
Da tiempo,
sí, por favor.
Bueno,
por favor.
Solamente comentar que esta iniciativa que ya tiene no menos de 4 años de unir a la región latinoamericana, creo que es una gran oportunidad. El hueco que dejó la NFPA en América Latina es una gran oportunidad para tomarla como región y realmente hacer que las cosas pasen. Alguien me enseñó eso recientemente, hacer que las cosas pasen y trabajar en 3 cosas principales. La regulación en la región, buscar en la medida de lo posible una homologación, una referenciación en la regulación. 2, en la profesionalización. Hemos desarrollado ya en la red latinoamericana un perfil de lo que debe ser un especialista en sistemas contra incendio y en base a eso se van a hacer los programas de educación y llevarlos a la certificación respaldada por la red y las asociaciones. Y tercero, como Carlos lo mencionaba, la creación del Día Latinoamericano o el Día Internacional de la Prevención de Incendios. Yo diría que uno de los eslogans que va a ser de la red y que debería de ser de cada una de nuestras organizaciones es unidos por una región sin víctimas de fuego. Muchísimas gracias, muchas felicidades a Brasil por esta parteaguas que continuó.
A trabajar en conjunto para que podamos intentar llevar las experiencias de un otro país. Seguramente tendremos oportunidad, como dice Víctor, de capacitaciones y de generar una agenda interesante, pero sí nunca pretenderemos ser una competencia o que la red se vuelva la reguladora de las actividades de cada país. No, realmente es al revés. Desde los países pueden contar con la red para que esto se difumine a nivel latinoamericano. Y como dice Víctor, creo que hay una oportunidad enorme ahorita que en Latinoamérica pues no hay un jugador importante en todo el tema de sistemas contra incendio, y creo que ahí hay una oportunidad para todos nosotros y para todas las asociaciones de poder fortalecer la cultura de la prevención y, como dice Víctor, empujar por una Latinoamérica sin víctimas del fuego. Gracias y felicitaciones, me uno a todos por el maravilloso evento, muy bueno y muy interesante y muy organizado. Gracias, Felipe, y a todos.
Muchas gracias a todos, amigos, es muy bueno estar aquí y ahora estamos con Paul. Hi, Paul, how are you?
I'm very well.
Paul.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you for joining us here. I was just introducing that we will now watch the video that Russ Fleming recorded, that you present Russ and present you yourself and IFSA. So if you have any few words to say before the video, feel free to do it, or we can we'll stay here. If you can be with us and have if you have some questions for to be answered later, feel free. It's up to you.
All right, I want to thank you all for inviting me to participate, and I look forward to answering your questions. In the video, I introduced myself, so I won't do that again. But I will apologize. I recorded it in 2 segments. The first segment I recorded a couple of weeks ago. The second segment I recorded the day before I sent it, but I forgot to take the cover off the lens. So the video starts with me speaking, then I disappear, then you get to see Russ. I apologize, that some technical difficulties on my part. So let's roll the video and then look forward to answering your questions when we're done.
No worries, Paul. The video is amazing. I'm sure people will love it. I will just introduce the video again in Portuguese, and then we watch them. I please ask you to go to the website if you want to see as well. So, pessoal, esse é o Paul, ele é o gerente agora full time, ele vai se apresentar no vídeo, vocês vão ver. O vídeo da IFSA com o Russ Fleming apresentando a história e o futuro dos códigos. Espero que vocês gostem. Na volta estaremos aqui para responder qualquer pergunta, eu e o Paul, se vocês a tiverem. Tá bom? Por favor, Samuel, pode rodar.
The IFSA was founded back in 1999 as a not-for-profit association to promote the use of effective water-based fire protection systems globally. Over the last decade, the IFSA has actively supported the formation and growth of AMRASI, ANRASI, and ABSpk as they became the leading organizations promoting the automatic sprinkler industry in their respective countries. The IFSA is eager to continue our support for each organization and are very excited about the formation of LATAM PCI to serve as the regional leader for the fire sprinkler industry throughout the Caribbean, Central and South America. I am very much looking forward to contributing to your success. IFSA's promotion of effective water-based fire protection systems takes many forms. But one of the most important, if not the most important, is working with our partners to develop and adopt legislation that requires the installation, testing, and maintenance of automatic sprinkler systems. While the industry can point to many success stories in various countries around the world, each of these changes did not occur quickly. Rather, it took significant effort from companies and organizations just like yours to effect the change we all want to see. But we have learned a number of lessons along the way, and there can be no one better to tell you more about those lessons than Russ Fleming. Russ is the former technical director and president of the National Fire Sprinkler Association in the United States, and he is still serving as the technical director with the IFSA. In his near 40-year career in the industry, he has spent over 30 years serving on the NFPA 13 Sprinkler Committee, is a former member of NFPA Board of Directors and past chairman of the NFPA Standards Council. He is also a fellow and past president of the Society of Fire Protection Engineers. His publications include hundreds of articles about automatic sprinklers and other water-based protection systems, as well as chapters in the NFPA and SFPE technical handbooks. So without any further delay, I will turn this presentation over to Russ.
Thank you, Paul. And I think we're all very pleased that the IFSA has a full-time managing director for the first time in its 20-year history. And I'm honored today to be asked to speak on the subject of the past and future of fire sprinkler systems in building regulations. Building regulations have been around for thousands of years. When I started it in the fire protection world in 1975, I attended several sessions talking about the history of building regulations, and they all started the same way, with the Code of Hammurabi, who was the sixth king of Babylon, who set 282 rules forward that established standards for commercial interactions, including penalties and the administration of justice. And all of this took place in 1754 BC. These rules were found carved onto a stone pillar in 1901. And basically, they're all deal with the concept of an eye for an eye, or at least those that deal with building regulations. For example, here, rule number 229 states if a builder builds a house for someone and does not construct it properly, and the house which he built falls and kills its owner, then that builder shall be put to death. And you can see others here dealing with the son of the owner, the slave of the owner, goods, and so forth. But again, it's all set up as a deterrent because any jurisdiction has the ability to set up rules to protect the public as part of its police power. Now, although those earliest rules dealt with structural collapse, there were some huge fires that took place historically and destroyed cities like Crete, Babylon, Carthage, and Rome. And in 1871 AD, Alfred the Great of England instituted some fire prevention measures. These are the earliest known fire prevention measures, which included the covering of cooking fires at night. And a couple hundred years later, the mayor of London proposed party walls of stone to help mitigate fire spread through the city. But even those laws and a subsequent one requiring the use of non-combustible materials for chimneys were unable to prevent the Great Fire of London that took place in 1666. Now, in the United States, where I have my experience certainly, we also had some cities early on begin to require that dwellings be constructed of non-combustible materials and with non-combustible roofs to help restrict the spread of fire throughout a city. And in 1896, which was coincidentally the same year that a group of insurance executives and Frederick Grinnell met together and wrote the first edition of a sprinkler system installation standard, and thereby formed the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, there was an insurance group called the National Board of Fire Underwriters that actually wrote the first model building law in the US and tried to have it adopted by the state of New York. Now, they were unsuccessful in that effort, but they did, a decade later, publish a model building code, the NBFU building code, which later became a model code known as the National Building Code, which was published periodically until 1967. Now, that 1905 National Building Code did include some requirements for sprinkler systems, specifically in below-grade areas of mercantile and manufacturing occupancies, and throughout the entire stage area of theaters, including pretty much everything behind the main curtain. So that would include backstage areas and workshops and so forth. Those all had to be sprinklered. And there were some incentives as well. Buildings that had sprinkler systems were allowed a 33 to 50% increase in the allowable areas between firewalls. So that National Building Code was out there for a number of years, but building officials were more and more reluctant to use a document created by the insurance industry, because obviously the insurance industry was protecting its profits, but cities and states were responsible for that police power we talked about. And the biggest cities started writing their own building codes, whereas the smaller cities started to group together and pool their resources and write some regional model codes. As you can see in this slide, the starting dates for the three major regional codes ranged from 1927 to 1950. And they tended to be in different geographic areas of the United States. The Uniform Building Code used by the Western states, the Standard Building Code used by the Southern states, and finally the Basic Building Code used in the Northeastern part of the United States. By 1972, these three code groups had started to cooperate and formed a Council of American Building Officials. And then finally in 1994, they merged totally as the International Codes Council to write a single model code, now known as the International Building Code. And it carried over a strong recognition of fire sprinkler systems that had been in all three of the model codes. Regional model codes are now termed legacy codes. And just as the earlier reactions to citywide fires led to the first ordinances and codes, the improvements in building fire protection generally came after serious fires took place in a particular occupancy. Even that 1905 National Building Code requirement for sprinklers in theater stage areas was influenced largely by a fire that took place in Chicago in 1903, the Iroquois Theater Fire. That fire started in the stage area and killed 602 spectators. So we've had decades of evolving codes in the United States, and we've had deadly fires in a variety of occupancies, which has led us to more and more requirements for sprinkler systems in our US building codes. So where do we require sprinklers now in the United States? Pretty much everywhere. All new high-rise buildings, all new public assembly buildings of size, including nightclubs that serve more than 100 people, all new nursing homes and other healthcare occupancies, all new stores and warehouses over 1,200 meters squared, all new hotels and apartment buildings, and in 2 states, California and Maryland, at the present time in every new single-family dwelling. And along with those code requirements for new construction, there are numerous cities and states and even federal regulations that have called for sprinkler retrofit of existing nightclubs, healthcare facilities, high-rise buildings, and other occupancies on a more piecemeal basis. And just as in the United States, the code improvements around the world tend to follow on the heels of fire tragedies. For example, when the IFSA first visited Brazil, we were told that most of the country looks to Sao Paulo as the code leader. And if you ask why, it's probably in response to two deadly high-rise fires that took place in the early 1970s. The Andrés building fire in 1972 resulted in 16 deaths, and the Joelma building fire in 1974 that killed 179 people. Similarly, the Grenfell Tower fire in London in 2017 that killed 71 individuals led to a re-examination of the building codes in England. In England, back in 1985, they'd taken 306 pages of building regulations and replaced those with only 24 pages of performance-based requirements. But in the aftermath of that horrible fire, the Royal Institute of British Architects, among other groups, has now proposed clearer, more prescriptive building regulations, including broad requirements for fire sprinkler systems. So that brings us to a quote from Otto von Bismarck, a Prussian and German statesman from the 1800s, who reminded us that only a fool learns from his own mistakes. The wise man learns from the mistakes of others. And that should be key in the adoption of building regulations. You don't want to wait until you have your own fire that shows the hazards of high-rise buildings or healthcare facilities or nightclubs. You want to see that these types of fires have taken place elsewhere and learn from that fire and change your codes before your jurisdiction suffers the same type of fire. Well, how do you go about doing this? Well, the National Fire Sprinkler Association, where I spent most of my career, made a policy decision back in the 1960s to promote fire sprinklers in building codes. It formed a building code committee to guide the process, and it hired staff to attend those meetings of the regional model code groups to help educate code writers and to encourage recognition of fire sprinklers in those codes. Now, what's interesting in retrospect is they initially didn't work toward mandatory requirements. They worked toward the creation of incentives, or what were called trade-offs, in order to provide a motivation for installing fire sprinkler systems to offset the additional cost of installing fire sprinklers. They would propose that other fire protection measures could be reduced. And in 1977, when I joined the association staff after a couple of years, one of my first assignments was to develop a book entitled The Architect's and Engineer's Guide to Automatic Sprinklers and Building Codes, which highlighted the recognition achieved for fire sprinklers in those model regional codes. So it talked about where sprinklers were required in those codes and the types of incentives that were available to architects and engineers if they chose to install fire sprinklers even on a voluntary basis. And by the way, some of those voluntary basis ideas included this type of thing: larger allowable building areas between firewalls, additional stories allowed for the building without increasing the structural fire resistance, longer allowable exit travel distances, and a wider selection of interior finish materials. Those were the types of incentives. And in 1980, with funding from the US Fire Administration and with the cooperation of that joint group, the Council of American Building Officials, we researched the files of the model code organizations to document the background and basis for the various sprinkler system requirements and incentives. And that study also included the cost analysis of several sample buildings, showing that by that time, the efforts to equalize the costs of sprinkler and non-sprinkler buildings had been successful. In other words, these code incentives or trade-offs I talked about, the larger building areas, the longer exit travel distances, and so forth, could pay for the cost of sprinklers in the building. And what this allowed was that architects and builders could see a path toward voluntarily installing sprinkler systems, and if sprinkler systems were mandated, not fight it so much, because these incentives were also available when a building was required to have a sprinkler system installed. So here are the steps I would put forward to ensuring code success with fire sprinkler systems. First of all, you have to appreciate the capabilities of fire sprinkler systems in order to convince governmental authorities of their effectiveness. And when we talk about the capabilities of fire sprinkler systems, one of the basic capabilities I always go back to is the crib fire test that all automatic sprinklers, or let's say the basic automatic sprinklers, have to satisfy in order to be listed by the product approval laboratories. And in that test, there's a large wood crib that's set on fire with a heptane fuel spray. And as you can see, the curve that spikes up quickly represents that fire. And for the first minute, the water is held back from the sprinklers so that the wood crib gets burning quite substantially, and you can see it elevates the temperature substantially. And then water is allowed to reach the sprinklers, and the sprinklers are required to knock down the temperature of the fire to below 600 degrees Fahrenheit within 5 minutes, and to keep it there for the duration of the test, which runs 30 minutes, despite the fact that the heptane fire is ongoing and is shielded such that it will not be extinguished by the fire sprinkler system. And the sprinklers are also required to limit the burning of that wood crib. Now, superimposed on here, the gradually increasing time temperature curve is the time temperature curve used to give a fire resistance rating to building components. And as you can say, it almost becomes a moot point, because if sprinklers are able to knock down a fire and control the temperatures of a fire, then those components are never really tested in a fire situation to their capacity. And that's the key to the incentive to reduce the fire resistance rating of certain building materials if fire sprinklers are provided. There are other examples of the demonstration of fire sprinkler capability. One of my favorites was actually a statement from the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the United States, which was required by Congress through the General Services Administration to state the capabilities of an automatic fire sprinkler system. And when they were asked to do so, after their study was completed, they concluded that a properly operating sprinkler system had these capabilities. 1, prevent flashover in the room of fire origin. 2, limit the fire size to no more than 1 megawatt. And that's about the size of a fully involved upholstered chair. And 3, prevent flames from leaving the room of fire origin. And there's really no other device or system that can accomplish these other than an automatic fire suppression system. And then finally, in terms of capability, I always like to go back and talk about the NFPA Fire Safety Concepts Tree, which is a logic tree that uses a series of and or gates to demonstrate how to achieve the ultimate fire safety objective. Obviously, one path to the fire safety objective would be to prevent the fire in the first place. But this fire safety concepts tree also recognizes that a properly designed, installed, and maintained sprinkler system can go up through a series of gates that require nothing else, a series of OR gates to the fire safety objective. And this is the key to why fire sprinkler systems can make up for other fire protection deficiencies. A properly designed, installed, and maintained sprinkler system can satisfy the fire safety objective by controlling or extinguishing the fire. The second step to ensure code success is to collect evidence of the reliability of sprinkler protection. It's not enough to say that sprinkler systems can do the job. You want to convince authorities that they will do the job, that they are sufficiently reliable. Now, back when the NFSA in the US was working with the model code groups and incorporating sprinkler trade-offs, there were two major studies of fire sprinkler performance that we brought to the attention of code writers. One was the fact that during the years 1925 through 1969, the NFPA had documented 81,425 fires involving fire sprinkler systems and showed that they were effective 96.2% of the time. And an even more impressive study came to us from Australia and New Zealand, where they documented a full century of sprinkler performance from 1886 to 1986, over 9,000 fires in that part of the world. And they showed a 99.45% successful performance of sprinkler systems, which was attributed to the fact that at the time they had a very good system of inspection, testing, and maintenance of their systems, better than what was available in the United States at that time. Now, there have been more recent studies of fire sprinkler system reliability as well. In 2001, inspection reports were analyzed in Denmark and showed that 98% of the systems were judged capable of functioning as intended at the time of their random inspections. In 2017, a chief fire officer's report in the United Kingdom found that systems were effective on 99% of the fires when operating and operated as expected on 94% of the fires. And that operated as expected might be low because certainly in the US, we've found that sometimes expectations of when a sprinkler system should operate are higher than they should be. And sprinkler systems aren't intended to operate on very small fires because we don't want the so-called false alarm problem. In Sweden, from 2004 to 2015, a review of Swedish rescue services data showed reliability of sprinkler systems over 99%. So as you can see, even in recent studies, where there is proper attention to inspection, testing, and maintenance of systems, they perform wonderfully. They have very, very high reliability. Now, the third step is one of making sure that quality safeguards are in place to maintain system effectiveness and reliability in the jurisdiction. And to ensure quality, we have to look at every step of the process by which sprinkler systems are put together and into a package. And it starts with the certification or licensing of individuals engaged in the design and layout and installation of fire sprinkler systems. And certainly in Mexico, the Citrasi program developed for sprinkler system designers is a good first step in that direction. Second bullet point deals with product listing and approval. The sprinklers themselves, can we have confidence in their quality? And the key there is listing or approval by a recognized testing laboratory for sprinklers and other components whose operation is critical to the success of the systems. Government agencies can specify which product approval laboratories, whether foreign or domestic, maintain sufficient levels of quality by means of their initial testing of products and their periodic review of production coming from the manufacturers. And this is a key point that the IFSA has tried to make over the years in the face of non-certified products and counterfeit products. It is important to rely upon a recognized product approval laboratory for sprinklers and other key components. And then finally, proof of continued system inspection, testing, and maintenance by building owners. Ultimately, building owners are responsible to ensure that the sprinkler systems in their buildings are kept in proper operating condition, ready to respond to a fire. And the final fourth step to ensuring code success is to be ready to demonstrate the cost benefit. Cost is always an issue, and the advocates of fire sprinkler systems must be prepared to demonstrate that the benefit provided by sprinkler system installation exceeds the cost of those systems. And this gets us back to remembering that the incentives for architects and builders can be as powerful as mandates for their installation. Code incentives for sprinklers can turn building designers, builders, and owners into fire sprinkler system advocates. One of the best examples in recent years comes to us from the United Kingdom, where the British Automatic Fire Sprinkler Association, BAFSA, in 2012 began a study to show that fire sprinklers could be economically retrofitted into existing high-rise residential housing projects without relocating or otherwise disturbing the residents, what they called tower blocks. Now, the IFSA assisted this project by financing an educational video describing the study, and you can still find that study, the Callow Mount Project video, online if you do a search for it. And what's interesting is that 5 years later, when the Grenfell Tower fire took place in 2017, in one of these tower blocks, BAFSA was prepared with its cost data, with its video, and other publicity materials to respond immediately to that fire, and was successful, therefore, in getting public opinion on its side to recognize the difference fire sprinkler systems can make in a high-rise fire. And it's led to the retrofit of an enormous number of previously non-sprinklered high-rise residential occupancies. Now, I've been asked to address the role of installation standards and what role do they play in this whole situation. And installation standards are generally considered to be minimum standards that for a jurisdiction set a reasonable level of risk. But it is important to recognize that they do set levels of risk. They set levels of protection, which in turn are levels of risk. And NFPA 13, for example, represents an accepted level of risk based on more than a century of experience. So it has become sort of the benchmark of what is a reliable, effective fire sprinkler system. Now, more recently, other NFPA standards have been developed for sprinkler system installation. The development of NFPA 13D for 1 and 2 family dwellings in 1980, and the development of NFPA 13R for residential occupancies up to 4 stories in height in 1989, helped establish acceptable risk levels for residential occupancies, where a slightly higher level of risk was accepted in return for reduced system costs, which provided the incentive to get those types of occupancies equipped with fire sprinkler systems. Now, individual countries certainly have the right to establish their own acceptable levels of risk in the area of standards, just as they have the right to do so in the areas of codes, and in terms of where sprinkler systems are required and such. But it should be kept in mind that the ability of sprinkler systems to make up for other fire protection deficiencies must be considered. And for that reason, in the US, for example, NFPA 13D and NFPA 13R aren't granted all of the incentives in the form of construction alternatives or trade-offs that are available for NFPA 13, because NFPA 13 represents a more robust, tried and true level of fire sprinkler protection. And as the standards set a level of risk, they are balancing effectiveness with cost. And risk factors in a sprinkler installation standard can include a number of things. One such thing is the number of sprinklers in the design area. Because when we set the number of sprinklers in the design area, we are establishing how many sprinklers we will provide water to in the event of a fire. NFPA 13D is based on a 2-sprinkler design area. NFPA 13R is based on a 4-sprinkler design area. And NFPA 13 is based on a larger design area in most cases. The risk factor can also include the duration of water supplies, and the risk factor can include which building areas are required to be sprinkled. In this simple graphic here, which addresses building areas required to be sprinkled, I showed the European sprinkler standard, EN 12845, out to the side of more, because traditionally the European sprinkler standard has required all above ceiling voids to be equipped with an array of sprinklers. And this accounts for some of the fact that traditionally European sprinkler systems have been more expensive than NFPA 13 systems, because NFPA 13 allows sprinklers to be emitted from those above ceiling voids when those areas are essentially non-combustible. On the other hand, NFPA 13R and NFPA 13D, for purposes of economy, have allowed emission of sprinklers from above ceiling voids, even in situations where that construction is combustible. So as you can see, there is the cost versus effectiveness spectrum. And again, NFPA 13 represents a benchmark with 100 years of history, and is important if code incentives are to be considered, that the effectiveness and reliability of the installation standard must also be considered. About 6 years ago, I gave a presentation in which I referenced Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. This was something that was put together in the 1950s, in which Maslow theorized that humans tend to aspire to a higher human need only when the lower human need and more basic human need is satisfied. And as you can see in this pyramid, the bottom level of the hierarchy of human needs are the physiological basic human needs of things like food and water and sleep. And then once those are satisfied, we can aspire to higher levels of safety, and above that, love and belonging, and above that, esteem, and finally at the top, self-actualization. And the reason I had talked about this in a previous presentation is that the prosperity of the worldwide population has increased over the past few decades. These charts show the last 2 or 3 decades and the degrees of economic freedom increasing, global GDP increasing, and as a result, the percentage of the global population in poverty decreasing. And what this has done, as worldwide prosperity has increased, the expanding middle class of the world has created a greater demand to move up from that bottom of the pyramid and rise higher. And the second level on that pyramid is safety, security of body, employment, resources, morality, the family, health, and property. And we need to recognize that fire sprinkler systems can play an important role in providing security of body, of employment, of resources, of the family and property. And it's this growing prosperity around the world that has, in fact, increased the use of fire sprinkler systems. some examples in recent years. And of course, we know that codes have been improved in Brazil, for example, in both Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo in recent years. In 2019, Australia lowered the threshold for sprinkler requirements in a residential high-rise from 25 meters down to 4 stories. In 2017, India upgraded its national building code with new sprinkler requirements for hospitals, nursing homes, storage facilities over 500 square meters, and commercial high-rise, including hotels over 15 meters in height. And in 2016, Wales became the world's first country to require sprinklers in all new residential occupancies, including single-family homes. But of course, now we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And what happens now is the big question, not only in terms of codes and fire sprinklers, but in a lot of areas. In October of 2020, the World Bank reported the following, that global extreme poverty is expected to rise in 2020 for the first time in 20 years, as the disruption of the COVID-19 pandemic compounds the forces of conflict and climate change. And the World Bank reports their estimate of an additional 88 million to 115 million people being pushed into extreme poverty this year, with the total rising to as many as 150 by 2021, with 82% of that total in middle-income countries. And of course, that raises concerns. Does this mean that we're going to drop down again to that lowest level on the hierarchy of human needs? That we're going to abandon safety needs to, again, address physiological needs? I mean, in the United States in recent years, it's been difficult to express the horror of thousands of people dying from fire every year, when we've had tens of thousands of people dying from automobile accidents, drug abuse, suicides. And when one compares now to the pandemic in which hundreds of thousands of people are dying, how do we continue to stress the need for fire safety and the use of sprinkler systems? Is it something that we're going to see a decrease in terms of building regulation? And I'd say no for 2 reasons. One, of course, is unlike these other areas, well, certainly like some of these other areas, we do have the solution to the fire problem. It's just the fact that we haven't fully implemented the solution to the fire problem. Fire sprinkler systems are the solution to the fire problem. And secondly, the other reason I say no is that it's very rare for building safety codes to be relaxed. It is much more likely that problems come not from a relaxation of codes, but from lack of enforcement and corruption. And one of the examples that gives some hope is that in October of 2015, in Romania, there was a nightclub fire in which 48 people were killed and another 163 injured. And it led to mass protests in the streets over unenforced codes. And those mass protests in turn led to the resignation of the prime minister and the arrest of the district mayor. So people will not stand for going backward in the area of building regulations. And that is a hopeful thing. One of the things I'd like to leave you with as I sum things up is a favorite quote from Martin Luther King Jr., the American civil rights leader, who famously said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." And in a similar fashion, I'd like to leave you with this thought. The arc of improved building fire safety is also long, and it bends toward the increased use of fire sprinkler systems. Thank you, and best of luck in pursuing the increased use of fire sprinkler systems in building regulations. Stay safe.
All right, let me hit stop record here.
Well, hi, Paul. Thank you very much for coming, being with us today. And it was an amazing presentation, Russ Fleming, again, with us, like the other face-to-face events that we've done in the past. So thank you very much for all the effort and bringing Russ and his video. And again, to be here with us.
Well, you're all very, very welcome. I've definitely enjoyed this process. I really wish I'd been able to come and meet all of you in person, but I'm hopeful in 2021 or 2022 we'll all get that same opportunity again once we get this COVID disease under some control.
Yes, Paul, I will try to translate a little bit what we are talking to people, okay?
Yep.
Bom, pessoal, aqui é bate-bola rapidinho com o Paul antes do próximo vídeo aí, que tá bem interessante, como eu apresentei para vocês. Eu basicamente agradeci aqui ao Paul por ele estar com a gente aqui agora, ele que é o gerente full-time da IFSA, e por ter trazido o Russ, que é tão conhecido por nós aqui no Brasil, pelos eventos que ele já participou, com essa apresentação incrível que ele nos trouxe. E o Paul tá bem feliz, ele tem acompanhado nesses dias na plataforma, tá bem feliz aqui, me contou dos vídeos que ele assistiu e da forma inovadora que a gente tem apresentado esse nosso seminário. So, Paul, regarding the message that Russ bring us during this video, do you have anything to complement, to add to this message, and about what IFSA is doing and available all around the world to implement and to make the things happen and to regulate, to increase the fire sprinkler protection all around the world?
Well, obviously, we have historically supported organizations like ABSpk to form themselves and begin to advocate for sprinklers in their specific countries. And we provide support for training and education. But if you were to ask me what the most important item is, it's affecting the change in the regulations that does two things. One, let's require sprinklers in more building types. The reality is nothing is more effective in saving lives, protecting property, and improving our economy and environment than putting the fire out quickly. The second emphasis is trying to make sure we use high quality products. And that goes with high quality skills. And as a group, obviously, you work on training and so on. But we're also a big emphasis on certified products, things that have been tested, manufactured, and if you install them as they're required to be, they will work for years and years and years. And that's been a little bit of an issue because there are plenty of people who will try to copycat or make a cheap version of some sprinklers and other components. And the history of their performance isn't that good.
Yeah. And we've shown these during these 3 last days. We tested some sprinklers, some non-certified sprinklers in the Brazilian laboratory. It's called IPT. So on Plenária 2, these last 3 days, we've shown some of the tests that are performed by our national standard. So I'll just try to translate what we've just said.
Understood.
Perguntei pro Paul, né, adicionar um pouquinho mais em cima do que o Russ falou e o que a IFSA tem feito. Ele disse que a IFSA, como sempre, apoia e tem apoiado e continuará apoiando associações como a ABSpk e que ela acredita muito nesse desenvolvimento e basicamente em 2 pilares. Eu posso talvez quebrar em 3 aí pelo que ele falou, que é aumentar o número de edificações com sprinklers no mundo, porque é mais do que conhecido. Acho que vocês, nessa altura do campeonato, se tinham alguma dúvida, não tem mais, de que sprinkler é a melhor solução para se combater um sprinkler desde o início e assim salvar vidas, salvar propriedades, salvar negócios. 2, ele acredita fortemente na educação e na certificação de profissionais, né? E 3, né, por isso eu dividi em terceiro, a certificação do produto. Não adianta essa educação e não adianta a gente falar para se instalar sprinkler se isso não for feito de maneira com qualidade através dos profissionais e através de produtos certificados, porque muito se copia imitando o sprinkler, né? Como dizem por aí, né, o sprinkler tampão, né, Felipe Decura aí deve estar assistindo, coloca muito bem, né, nas redes sociais o tempo inteiro promovendo a questão da certificação e trazendo que o que a gente vê sem a certificação por aí, e vê muito, a quantidade de importados nesse sentido é muito grande, é o sprinkler tampão. Eu aproveito para convidar vocês no prédio da IFSA, na nossa área principal aqui do site, da plataforma, tem um vídeo que a IFSA desenvolveu a partir de uma experiência, de um projeto que a ABSpk fez em parceria com a IFSA, que extraiu vários sprinklers e testou na FM Approvals nos Estados Unidos e na UL, e 100% da amostra falhou, e o vídeo mostra um pouquinho do prejuízo e do problema disso aí. Tá? Eu falei para o Paulo também, após esse discurso dele dos produtos certificados, é que nós mostramos nesses últimos 3 dias, na plenária 2, quem não assistiu, né, tem essa possibilidade de correr lá e assistir, que está tudo gravado, os testes feitos no IPT com sprinklers certificados e não certificados. Poucos testes, mas uma amostra aí do que realmente é importante e que não funciona nos tampões. Paul, I've just invited everybody to visit the IFSA building in our sprinkler island in the main page here in the website, so they can see the video that IFSA produced and released some years ago, based on some research, some data gathered from projects like the ABSpk one that we extracted some non-certified sprinklers and sent to UL and FM approvals in US, and so they can see how important is the certification of products. And Paul, feel free if you have any word to add. If not, we can go to the next video. It's a long but amazing video with the words that main players, international main players, manufacturers and certification bodies, telling us how they see the past, how the history of sprinkler systems, and how the future they expect to see the near future.
Well, I don't really have anything to add today, but I welcome all of you to visit our virtual office here on the Sprinkler Island. And if any of you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to email me. I will do my very best to get back to you, because I want to work with you all to better develop your skills, build your markets, build your companies, and ultimately build the success in automatic sprinklers throughout Brazil and across Latin America.
Thank you very much, Paul. Just to let you know, a comment here just pop up here. People are saying that the Russ presentation was amazing, and like I already knew this, people would love it, and so thanks Russ again, and it's always a pleasure to have him with us.
I will do that.
Pessoal, eu aqui me despeço do Paul, até perguntar se ele depois quiser continuar aqui com a gente na plataforma, ou caso venha alguma dúvida, depois a gente caminha para ele. Tem bastante coisa para mostrar ainda, esse próximo vídeo é longo, mas eu fortemente aconselho vocês a pegar logo no comecinho do vídeo, pega um cafezinho, vai no banheiro e fica para assistir inteiro. É 1 hora de vídeo aí, mas as grandes cabeças aí, cofundadores, alguns dos cofundadores da ABSpk e grandes players do mundo aí, que vão trazer um pouquinho da experiência deles e como eles veem o futuro. Então, aproveitem, depois eu volto aí com o nosso side by side, com Paiva narrando e contando um pouquinho mais. So, thanks, Paul. Let's see the video now.
Perfect. Hello, I'm Paul Sincaglia, the new Managing Director of the International Fire Suppression Alliance, or IFSA. For those of you who are not aware of who we are, the IFSA was founded back in 1999 and is a not-for-profit association promoting the use of effective water-based fire suppression systems globally. Over the last decade, the IFSA has actively supported the formation and growth of AMRASI, ANRASI, and ABSpk as they became the leading organizations promoting the automatic sprinkler industry in their respective countries. The IFSA is eager to continue our support for each organization and are very excited about the formation of LATAM PCI to serve as the regional leader for the fire sprinkler industry throughout the Caribbean, Central and South America. I am very much looking forward to contributing to your success. Today, I have the privilege to serve as the moderator for a discussion with 6 of the sprinkler industry's most influential leaders to discuss how they see the evolution of the fire sprinkler industry here in Latin America. Our guests include Mark Fessenden with Johnson Controls, Kevin Fee with Reliable Sprinkler, Larry Thau with the Victol Company, Mike Bosma with the Viking Group, Edward DeMuro with Underwriters Laboratories, and Rich Barron with FM Approvals. Many of you know our guests from the many years that you have worked together. But for the benefit of everyone attending today, or those who are not as familiar with our industry, I will let each panelist introduce themselves, their company, and a little bit about their experiences here in Latin America.
Hello, I'm Mark Fessenden. I'm Director of Industry Relations at Johnson Controls. For the last 25 years, I've been involved in the manufacturing of active fire protection systems, from water-based systems involving automatic sprinklers, water spray and water mist, to special hazard systems utilizing clean agents, CO2, wet and dry chemical, as well as foam. My focus has been on innovation, new technology, codes and standards, technical services, and training. I'm so happy to be part of today's discussion.
My name is Kevin Fee. I am president and principal owner of the Reliable Automatic Sprinkler Company. Reliable was founded in 1920 by my grandfather, Frank Fee. We are a 4th-generation family-owned company that just reached our 100th anniversary in business. Reliable is a leading manufacturer and international distributor of fire sprinkler products and has been servicing the Latin American sprinkler market for over 50 years.
Okay, my name is Larry Thaw. I've been associated with Victol for 47 years now. And my most recent position was as Executive Vice President and Chief Technical Officer. At the present time, I am a member of the board of the National Fire Sprinkler Association and the International Fire Suppression Alliance.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Bosma. I'm pleased to be on this panel. I'm with the Viking Corporation, and I'm the Executive Vice President for Sales of Viking products outside North America. Obviously, that includes our Latin America region. Viking was founded in western Michigan in a small town of Hastings in 1897 by an immigrant named Emil Tiden. After multiple business ventures, including not the least of which was a fire protection equipment manufacturer and an installation business, the Viking brand of fire sprinkler equipment was formally born and launched as a company in 1927. Viking continues to be an integrated manufacturer and supplier of fire protection sprinkler equipment worldwide. The Viking product line incorporates a complete water-based product line, along with a range of special hazard options. The Latin American market is a very important part of our international effort and is served by our USA organization, Viking Supply Network, both out of Texas and Florida. We offer representatives that call on our customers from those branches, and we service them both with in-kind support and in-language support. So we look forward to working with you and the rest of this panel. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is Eduardo del Muro Cuellar from UL, based in Mexico City. As many of you know, UL has been there for over a century already. We were born in 1894, that's it, on 19th century. And we have been over Latin America region for close to 30 years. The first office we opened was in 1995 at Mexico City. And from there, we were opening other places such as Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Peru, and other places. We already have an office. Our effort over the Latin America region is directly related with our mission, working for a safer world. And that's what we're looking for in Latin America region. We want to improve the quality of living over this region.
Hello, I'm Rich Farron, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of FM Approvals, and I'm happy to be participating on the panel today. FM Approvals was founded in 1886, and for all those years, we have offered worldwide certification for products and services used in the property loss prevention industry. Our certification ensures that end users know that the products or services have been tested to a rigorous and robust standard and have met all those requirements and are adequate for use in property loss prevention situations. The manufacturers that we work with come from the fire protection, the building materials, and the electrical systems industries. Our mark are backed by research, backed by science, and backed by testing to ensure that they will do their job when called upon to do so. Architects, specifiers, authorities having jurisdiction, and end users use FM approvals and FM approved products to make sure that the facilities that they are trying to protect are protected by robust products that will provide property loss prevention. The FM approval of mark is recognized around the world as a quality mark. It's not a regional mark. Our products are tested to one standard and then can be used anywhere in the world. Fires do not know country or region borders, and neither do FM approved products.
It really is amazing that many of the firms represented here today have been in the industry for 75 years or more, and in some cases over a century. But can you provide us some details regarding your company's development and evolution in the worldwide sprinkler industry in, say, the last 10 to 15 years?
Victaulic is actually one of the companies that has been in business for over a century. And we've been innovating in the general area of pipe couplings, but also we've evolved into being a full array manufacturer of fire sprinkler heads and various devices. Most recently, in 2005, we introduced a completely new style of Victaulic coupling, which we refer to as installation ready. Unlike the prior models, this particular device does not have to be disassembled in order to be used. So it's placed on the pipe ends in one piece, and literally after it's positioned, you tighten the bolts and you get a complete assembly. We also introduced one of the first hybrid fire suppression systems in the world, the Victaulic Vortex system, in 2009. And the Vortex system incorporates micropulverized water and nitrogen to suppress fires, and it's been used in areas such as data centers, engine rooms, turbine enclosures, and various other hazardous environments. We've also developed a smaller diameter system, or IGS system, and we released that in 2018. The IGS system enables Victaulic to be used effectively in sizes smaller than the typical range that people specified us before. So in the area of fire sprinklers, we have continued to innovate and add to our product line throughout this time period. It ultimately resulted in the company acquiring Globe Fire Sprinkler in 2019. So, we've gone from a relative newcomer in fire sprinkler heads to a relatively well-established competitor in the global fire sprinkler market.
Viking has remained committed to the fire sprinklers market with leading-edge product technologies and state-of-the-art, combined with state-of-the-art customer service and support. Product developments in the last decade spawned many areas, but they could probably be summarized in three different buckets. First, there's the residential area. Viking has developed the broadest, aesthetically pleasing, with a lot of unique options for the residential world, which has become a very important market in North America and Canada, something we expect to see grow in the Latin America market in the coming decades. We also focused many efforts in specialty sprinklers, things like attic sprinklers, things like institutional sprinklers, things like sprinklers for hospitals, special applications. Any problem you might encounter, it's been our goal to solve that problem. So Viking has a basket of those things to take any of your problems and provide a solution. The third bucket, I would say, is the storage products. The storage and movement of logistics, logistical movement of materials has created a huge demand and a big shift since the 1980s in how we provide protection in those storage applications. Viking has poured millions of dollars and thousands of hours of effort into developing a very broad line of products that allows storage to some of the highest heights and some of the most unique configurations and some of the broadest commodities. So all these product developments have been combined with an expanded worldwide distribution center and these cutting-edge processes to make it easy to access no matter where you're at, including your regions in Latin America. Thank you.
Innovation is a critical part of the sprinkler development history. It never stops, and that's great. That's very important because there are new scientific data, new engineering designs, and so on. So the standards needs to keep pace of that innovation. The first ever UL standard for sprinklers was developed in 1919, which is over 100 years old already. Some people might ask, so is that innovation to keep a standard that old? The standard has been updated in a periodic basis. In fact, the last update was done just back in April this year, 2020. Even with this critical scenario we are living these days worldwide, the standards have been updated and reviewed properly. This in order to keep aligned also some other requirements. Many of you know perfectly well some codes directly correlate to specific product standards. And that's exactly the case of UL standard UL 199, which directly satisfies the requirements for the code NFPA 13. So in order to keep pace of the requirements on NFPA 13, UL updates in a periodic basis the applicable standards, in this case UL 199 for sprinklers. That's the way we keep pace with the innovation in the industry. All scientific improvements, updates, engineering devices, designs, and so on are considered there, are taken into consideration thanks to people like you, experts in the area that provide this information, feedback, their needs to keep this alignment so we can all live properly with safe devices installed properly.
So how have the founding of LATAM and its members AMRASI, ANRASI, and ABSpk helped the sprinkler industry and your business in particular?
I would like to compliment each Latin American country for the formation of their trade association in each of their respective countries. I applaud their effort in trying to combine their resources to help each other in the continuing effort to further develop the fire sprinkler concept. It is very important to share information and experiences to enhance the potential of success in a shorter period of time.
So each association has fundamentally helped both the industry and FM approvals by educating specifiers and regulators and authorities having jurisdiction and end users about the benefits of using fire sprinklers. Now, the associations, both individually and collectively, have been better able to pool their resources to make and maintain contacts in government and non-government organizations and send a consistent message to the region about the importance and the need for fire sprinklers.
Obviously, the big story this year is COVID-19. While most of us are dealing with this crisis locally, I'm curious about how your global organizations are responding. How did the onset of the pandemic impact your product and technology strategies on the first half of the year? And what are your contingency plans should infections and risk increase here in 2021?
At Johnson Controls, we touch customers in every corner of the world. COVID-19 had a significant impact to our business operations. We felt the impacts first in Asia, and then shortly thereafter, Europe and the Americas. Our team reacted very quickly to assure a continuity of exceptional services to our customers. We implemented robust safety protocols to assure our employees remained safe and healthy, and our supply chain did an absolutely amazing job communicating to our vendors that we were an essential business. I'm so proud of how our employees handled themselves during the early onset of the pandemic and how they continue to do so today. We've been in the fire protection industry since 1850. We'll continue to make products and services that are mission critical for many years to come.
Reliable has been very fortunate that COVID-19 has only had a minimal impact on our employees and our operations. It has not negatively impacted our strategies for product development. However, we've had experienced some delays in getting product approvals due to the impact that COVID-19 has had on the approving agencies and companies. As far as future contingency plans, the COVID-19 situation has been and will continue to be very dynamic and fluid. We have taken more of a reactionary position in trying to understand the impact of this virus in various and different applications. However, we are very proactive in protecting the safety and health of our employees, which is paramount to us.
No doubt the pandemic scenario we are living in 2020 has been critical and very challenging, no doubt about it. As you know, UL doesn't really create any product. We don't manufacture anything. We test, we certify, we list all the products manufacturers provide to the industry for protection. When 2020 started, we realized, as everybody else, that the pandemic was starting in Asia. Being a global company helped us a lot. We have a lot of staff in Asia, in China, Japan, and so on, but also we do have a lot of people in Europe and in the Americas. So we were able to distinguish how the pandemic scenario was moving from Asia to Europe to Americas, and we were able to consider that into our planning for proper serving of our customers, authorities, importers, manufacturers, and so on. So when Asia was struggling deep with the pandemic scenario, Europe was starting to develop that scenario, while the Americas, United States, Latin America were not really yet there. This scenario, of course, changed. Europe was now the epicentric scenario of the pandemic, not so much the Americas, and China and Asia in general terms were declining. So basically the way it was moving was helping us. But also very important to mention is our own core team at UL, all the presidents and everybody, the whole team of UL were really deep into the concern on taking the right action to compensate for this critical COVID scenario we were living on. Say that means we were working as much as possible from home. We were working with the proper distance. We were implementing immediately the proper scenario for safety in terms of proper distance from other colleagues and so on. In such a way, we were able to decrease any risk among our staff, where we were having plans in place to check how we were doing on a per office basis, and even on a per office basis, how we were doing. And very important, I believe this is critical. We were approaching our customers, saying what? Trying to find out how they were doing, both in terms of personal health. We are really concerned on how they are doing in that regard, their families, but also How were their employees, their factories, their colleagues doing? And how could we help them? In many scenarios, we were implementing virtual activities. Thanks to the technology like the one we are using today, we are able to compensate a lot of the scenarios that apparently were critical, no longer were critical. It was exactly like being there in a virtual way. So impact in general terms were decreased, were not sensitive, not critical, thanks to the fact that this is a truly global organization spread all over the country. We were moving with the pandemic, taking the right action at the right moment or ahead of, in front of, before it were happening. So that's the way we are doing. And it seems to us we are doing a great job because also we have a great team dedicating a lot of effort to compensate for this scenario.
With COVID infections nowhere under control at this point, do you foresee any impact on your production and/or distribution markets around the world?
Well, we focused on two primary issues in consideration of COVID. Number one was the safety of our employees around the world, and number two was continuity of supply to our customers. And we had a difficult time answering with a single trajectory for the entire world, because our experience has been this had initial impact in Asia, then migrated to Europe, then came to the US. So we've been managing as those individual trading areas for us, whatever they required. We've been managing those individually and independently. So it means that we've been minimizing disruptions to our supply chain and do not see any reason that supplies of our products would be disrupted throughout the COVID activity. We continue to monitor these situations very closely, and we continue to make adjustments. We built redundancies into our manufacturing that didn't exist prior to the COVID emergency. But our greatest concern isn't the present, isn't even the near-term present. It's what 2021 is going to look like. And although it's easy to see that the retail consumer industry products seem to be doing well, we do think that the construction industry in 2021 is going to be heading into some difficult times. We don't know, as I sit here right now, how difficult those times will be, but we think that construction around the entire world will be under pressure in 2021. So once again, we believe we have put all the things in place to ensure the safety of our employees and continuity of supply to our customers.
So we continue to talk to our customers around the world and follow trends in manufacturing, construction, and the oil and gas industries. Now, the only country that appears to be getting back to normal, let's say pre-COVID conditions in manufacturing and construction, is China. Okay, but the trends in every other country are showing improvement. Certainly are more optimistic than they were in the June-July timeframe. I mean, even India, with its massive shutdowns, the construction and manufacturing industries are beginning to trend back towards pre-COVID times. Now, in the fire protection industry, the trends are also improving, and the outlook is more optimistic, certainly than it was in May, June, and July. You know, the feedback from our customers indicates that 2021 will be a good year, and growth may actually return to normal. Now, the gas and oil industry, the outlook is not as optimistic because the industries themselves are still depressed, right? And this has more to do with gas prices than it does with the pandemic.
The reliability of sprinklers in North America and some other countries is considered excellent. Do you think the same level of reliability exists in other parts of the world?
Not every country has the same quality standards. Some countries allow the use of products that may have questionable pedigrees. I can go to certain online retailers today and buy knockoff products that contain O-ring water seals, counterfeit glass bulbs, and frames that may not even stand up under fire conditions. As an industry, we have to raise the bar on quality and demand that quality products be used in our installations.
Certified sprinklers are by far the most dependable products that we can lean on in our fire protection schemes. Many parts of the world, including Latin America, have allowed non-certified products to begin to creep into their markets. It's an economic reality when people are pressed to do the best construction prices, but the very, very tiny bit of economic savings, that upfront savings that could occur with a non-certified product, put the entire population and property and life-saving schemes at risk. These are not products without that certification. You cannot bank on them working. And the FSA has put a lot of effort into trying to promote some of the results of those products if you don't follow the certification. The reality is that certification gives us the assurance that that product will work when it's called on, sometimes 5, 10, or 15 years down the road. And that performance is being counted on by the general society so they can provide insurance schemes and safety for their population and protection for their property. Thank you.
Reliability for sprinklers should be the same everywhere. Take into consideration, I'm explaining this or sharing this comment from the perspective of a TIC organization. We test, we inspect, and we certify products. We don't manufacture. So you name it, any region in the world, Asia, Europe, Latin America, wherever we test, inspect, or certify a product, we use the same procedure, the same UL standard, as an example, UL 199, that fulfills the requirements for NFPA 13. So anywhere in the world, reliability is exactly the same for UL listed products. But this brings me to a very important issue. Authorities, manufacturers, installers, everybody, all those key stakeholders needs to take their own role with responsibility, of course. I want to say that because we all work as a ecosystem, so to speak, in a holistic system where everybody deals with a responsibility. So the systems are reliable everywhere, the ones listed by UL. But we need to confirm that is also the case for whomever is installing the system, for whomever is authorizing the system, and so on. And of course, we help a lot to authorities and others whenever they need that confirmation. But again, this is like a shared responsibility. And I say that also because the sprinklers is one of the devices that from time to time we find counterfeited products. So that's why we work with local authorities, international authorities, even with the Interpol, in order to track down where those counterfeited products were found and to take legal action. Because as everybody knows, sprinklers are critical for saving lives. And we cannot allow for counterfeited product to exist in the marketplace. Whenever we detect a counterfeited sprinkler with the UL mark on it, we work directly, immediately with all relevant key stakeholders in order to keep and be certain that we maintain the same reliability everywhere in the world, and Latin America is not an exception.
So how does the difference affect your firm's efforts to expand the use of sprinklers in other parts of the world?
JCI relies heavily on our third-party approvals as validity of our product quality. If a product has a legitimate FM, LPCB, VDS, or UL mark, you know it's a quality product. We focus our efforts in regions that recognize the importance of using high-quality products. But the use of quality products is just one part of the equation. Those products must be designed, installed, and maintained so that our systems function properly when they are needed most.
The fire sprinkler industry, through its strong local association, must work together with the authorities having jurisdiction to continuously implement programs and actions to ensure fire sprinkler systems' reliability and performance.
difference absolutely does have an effect. And it's something we first try to understand, and then based upon the facts that we determine, we react appropriately market by market. So the question of quality seems like a simple enough question, but quality on its own isn't the real issue. The issue is, do the markets, the countries where these problems are occurring, do they have a testing and a regulatory and an installation and code enforcement environment in place such to ensure that the safety of the public and the continuity of businesses is protected? Quite frankly, to get to the point where we that are permissive of lower quality products or have a minimal regulatory compliance culture, those are the markets that get prioritized last. We don't forget them, but they become a low priority. And our lasting concern is probably the result of the various malfunctions that may occur where quality and regulatory and testing is not the best. Because what happens is we all suffer when things go wrong in fire sprinkler systems, no matter where we are around the world. And that bleeds into our ability to get standards in place, to get enforcement personnel. We're managing safety and risk. If we don't provide that risk with a product that'll endure for 25 years, we've got a problem with public perception. So we remain very, very concerned about this. We prioritize as the markets permit, and we do make long-term investments to try to turn around the markets that may have gone astray.
Viking promotes, sells, and manufactures only certified sprinklers and componentry in all parts of the free world. We're an integrated supplier and manufacturer, and to some areas an installer to varying degrees, depending on what location you're in. But no matter where you see us in Europe or Asia, Latin America, US, or Canada, we always do the same thing. We provide certified products to the fire sprinkler market to provide those life safety schemes, to provide advantageous insurance, and also life and property safety. Thank you.
To expand the use of sprinklers in all parts of the world is critical and has not been easy. Somehow has been easy, somehow not that much. And I say that because expansion sometimes finds some trouble. We say that whenever we don't find the right code to be applied. Codes are critical. You name it, code, construction code, regulations, the name can change. But what I'm addressing here is a proper, formal, and mandatory regulation to have sprinklers in a given place, in a given building. That doesn't exist in Latin America in every country. It's more in a per country basis, and sometimes it's even in a per city, per building basis. So whenever we are able to find a country, or to detect, I don't know, a country where a regulation exists, mandatory to comply, and that demands for sprinklers to exist, that becomes, of course, easier. Our effort for everybody in these meetings, in this conference, is to push to get closer into that direction, to the right scenario where a code exists, asking for the right sprinkler system to be installed according to the occupation and so on, and for the right element, a system, the sprinkler, the pipes, and so on, to exist that satisfies this code. That is critical to exist. The code asking for the compliance of the existence of a sprinkler system and the standard testing the system, and an authority asking to comply with that. That is the difficulties we are experiencing on expanding the use of sprinklers over Latin America region. Again, because we have a region not exactly the same. We have scenarios great countries very deep into the concern of providing safe places for the right standard for living for their population. Some countries are still pushing to have it. We are there helping them all the time, and we are getting closer every day to have that right level. Not yet there, getting close.
Poor quality, uncertified sprinklers can tarnish the reputation of quality built, robustly certified sprinklers. For example, if there's a fire in the building and those poor quality sprinklers have been used, if they fail to function, and they probably will, what gets reported in the media? The media says there was a fire in the building was sprinklered, and the sprinklers didn't control the fire. Now, it lumps all sprinklers together. They didn't say poor quality sprinklers, they said sprinklers. And what happens? When you go before a government agency or a body and you try to get them to recommend or mandate the use of sprinklers, the naysayers will point back and say, well, remember that building fire? It had sprinklers and they didn't work, and therefore sprinklers don't work. And now the challenge is huge because you have to then go into what is a quality sprinkler and a certified sprinkler and what's a poor quality sprinkler. And it makes it very, very foggy.
Following up on my previous question, in your opinion, what are the major barriers for the adoption of the well-evolved and proven codes and standards in Latin America?
There are a wide variety of safety documents available today that could be used as a foundation or best practice. The biggest barrier to adoption or use of internationally recognized best practices is the fact that those documents are usually only available in English. Making sure the materials are available in local language, Spanish and Portuguese, will go a long way towards the creation of robust protection standards. It's important to remember that safe building construction starts with a comprehensive building and fire code. Once these safety standards are adopted, compliance has to be enforced.
We see the barriers fairly straightforward. I think the first of all is the fact that previously fires in many parts of the globe were considered to be fate. Fires are just something that's going to occur naturally, and people are going to be hurt, goods are going to be lost, but there's not much you can do about it. We see that changing. We see the cultures now changing to the point that all fire is becoming something that people believe is preventable, either through the general enactment of safety procedures or more importantly for all of us, the installation of fire suppression systems. So we see that as being a fundamentally good thing. We also see that most nations now have adopted some form of a regulatory and code structure by which products are evaluated to ensure their function. We don't see this done uniformly. We see it done better in some areas than in other areas, but we see that happening. And in fact, for Latin America, we believe that is one of the areas that we could use your help with, because we think that fragmentation of fire sprinkler standards and codes is one of the things that will make investment for all of us much higher. Because if we have a different set of acceptance criteria for one country versus the other in the same general geography, that just is inefficient financially, and ultimately it gets passed on as a cost to our installers. So while we're not advocating a blind adherence to the North American model, just for an example, if you look at the US and Canada, combined there's a population of somewhat over 400 million people with effectively one set of codes and standards and one group that's providing the regulatory compliance. a large homogeneous market like that, or as much of it as we can attain for Latin America, is what we think is in all of our mutual best interests. So, we would believe in supporting that. And I think lastly, as a key element of this, is the environment for inspecting and code compliance. Because we also see many nations around the world that have some fairly thorough specifications. And they have multi-page documents and procedures, and they comply with this and they comply with that. But at the end of the day, if the installers don't have the information they need to install it properly, if the materials aren't consistently tested, and if someone in the trading area doesn't have the authority to say that does not meet compliance, it cannot be placed in service, we see a diminishment of our efforts. So those are some of the things I think we should look out for in Latin America.
The United States has been very successful in the creation of an always improving model for the continuous promotion and development of the fire sprinkler initiative. There is no need to spend time and limited resources in creating this wheel. The U.S. has the information and technology which is tried and proven. The Latin American fire and safety organizations should seek out and wrap their arms around this technology and experience and apply it to each one of their respective countries and markets. This technology is available for their usage.
There are 5 things that need to be in place to end up with a reliable fire protection system. You need to have effective building codes that mandate the use of fire protection systems. You need to have competent design and installation standards that are enforced. You need to have quality, certified products certified by a reputable organization. You need to have robust testing and inspection and maintenance standards. And finally, you need to have well-trained and qualified personnel. Now, you need to have all 5 of these things, and they all need to be robust. Any one of them is either non-existent or isn't robust enough. It's the weak link in the chain. It could cause catastrophic failure. So you need to be careful. But the challenge is you need to convince a wide variety of stakeholders to get all 5 of these things in place. You need to educate those stakeholders and you need to empower them, right? So the regions around the world, organizations have to go in and convince them of the need for sprinklers, of the benefits of sprinklers, and ultimately need to have in place meaningful requirements, not just watered down requirements that someone can point to and say, we have them, but requirements and codes and standards with actual sustenance. Now, the best codes and practices and policies and standards will not guarantee the system unless somebody enforces it. Now, some organization has to step up. Some organization has to be charged with doing the enforcement. We've all seen building fires, and a month or 2 or 3 later, you read the report, and the report says that the fire protection system did not meet the building code. And you look at the building code and it was fine, it was robust, but there was a breakdown somewhere. Somebody did not validate that the fire protection system met the code. It doesn't help the building owner. It doesn't.
To what extent are uncertified and low-quality products affecting your business globally and here in Latin America?
Uncertified and low-quality products have no place in a fire sprinkler system. Fire sprinkler systems must perform successfully when required. Failure to do so will put in jeopardy lives and property, as well as the outstanding reputation of effectiveness of fire sprinkler systems. This would be totally unacceptable. This is why the development of enforcement by authorities in jurisdiction is critically important, guaranteeing the performance of fire sprinkler systems?
In Latin America, there are significant numbers of non-certified sprinkler products that have been creeping into places like Brazil and some, I guess, fringe areas of the market. Around the world, we also see some non-certified sprinklers in Eastern Europe, parts of Asia, China, India, and parts of the Middle East. When the overall protection requirements are not enforced through strong codes or very economically advantageous insurance rates, there's always that possibility for non-certified and sub-quality products and systems to make their way into the market. Thank you.
Poor products exist everywhere. That might not be critical for some other devices, but for sprinklers, that's life safety device. So we have zero tolerance for poor quality products related to sprinklers. We at UL, we don't really call it poor quality. We call it counterfeited products. Those products that claim to be UL listed and they were never listed by UL. That's the most dangerous scenario. And we have detected a number of places. I remember a few years ago, a place in Mexico City, selling these sprinklers. And the seller was saying something like, yeah, it's something to push water, just like that. They didn't even know what was it about. It's critical because it's a life-saving device. So whenever we detect counterfeit product in the marketplace, we raise a number of alarms everywhere, local, regional, international. We work with Interpol trying to track down the company or the organization counterfeiting the mark, so which is at the end of the day a counterfeited product that not necessarily we comply with the requirements for the installation and to save lives, which is the purpose of the device, of course. So it's critical. It's in the top priority in our organization all the time. And we keep pushing everybody, any stakeholder, importer, installer, seller, final user, office manager, whomever, dealing with sprinklers, to raise a hand to UL saying, hey, I detect this because we need to take immediate action. People's life is a danger. Every day, a product counterfeited is there in the ceiling somewhere and is threatening somebody's life and they are not aware of it. So we ask you, take advantage of this conversation to ask you for your help, to help everybody to live a safer life.
In many Latin American countries, there are a limited number of qualified designers, installers, and maintenance personnel. Does your company consider this to be a significant problem? And if so, does your company support making the changes to improve the situation?
You know, the training demand in Latin America is literally off the charts. There's a real passion for good protection schemes, and there's a bevy of young, talented folks that are eager to learn the trade. It's not a problem as much as an opportunity. I really enjoy working with this region, and Viking supports many organizations that offer training. Many of those you know are a part of this conference, AMRASI, ANRASI, ABSpk. And in addition, we support organizations like the NFPA or the IFSA, and maybe even the AFSA, that provide training for our distributors and our customers at least once a month. I can tell you that when you conduct training in this region, it's exciting to see the number of young people that are engaged. And it's rare to have an event that you don't have at least sometimes 200, 300, or 400 people participating. Even now when it's virtual, the numbers just continue to rise. For us, that's very encouraging. The market is in a very early stage of development, and the number of people, population, economic growth provide a real opportunity. And this training, we feel, will not only help train the installers, but also create an appetite for the certified products. Thank you.
Yes, to have the right installation is critical. It's critical. We cannot consider a safe system if this was installed a sprinkler, a pipe, the whole system in such a way that doesn't comply with the minimum requirements for a safe system. And be more explicit. for a UL listed sprinkler, the system needs to comply with NFPA 13 to call it a proper system installation. So we have a limited force over the region in Latin America that properly install these systems. That's an issue, yes, but at least we know this is an issue, and many organizations, like the ones attending this conversation right now, are aware of this. So everybody's making an effort to move one step further closer to the right position where a proper many organizations in Mexico, in Colombia, in Peru, in other places are making this effort, and individuals and organizations are taking this seriously. So they are getting the knowledge, they are getting the training, the requirements, the understanding. Everybody's making an effort. We are not yet there. We need to give an extra mile, give an extra effort to be at the right place. That's why organizations such as UL, we are giving a number of webinars, open, free, and so on, to improve this knowledge, to at least raise awareness and education level, of course, on all stakeholders, authorities, installation, import, critical role to have this right system installed where it needs to exist at the right level, satisfying the right code, the applicable code, NFPA 13, NFPA 101, any applicable code with the right system. So yes, it's critical. We are not there. An effort is done. Please keep doing that effort. You know you are doing that right. Just go the extra mile.
So, where do you see the future of sprinkler technology moving over, say, the next 5 to 10 years? And are there any industry areas or technologies that you are particularly excited about?
I can't spill the beans on everything just yet, but rest assured, a great example is our current work on electronic sprinklers. We use real-time inputs to assess fire conditions in the building, and then using that data, we determine which sprinklers to activate. This allows us to provide protection for some of the most challenging fire hazards we face in the industry today. This technology highlights that more and more building systems are data-enabled and connected to the web. Buildings in the future will be smart and enabled by artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. That's the future that really excites me.
Over the last 50 years, sprinkler manufacturers have consistently developed new technology for both existing applications and to enhance the performance of fire sprinklers to perform effectively to new storage application sprinklers and residential sprinklers are examples of this changing and more improved technology. I'm very proud of the accomplishments of all the sprinkler manufacturers in providing new technology to enhance the performance of fire sprinkler systems in both existing markets as well as new and developing requirements. I'm excited about the new technology that we are presently developing for near and future applications.
The world is rapidly evolving into a very connected network. Components in fire sprinkler systems are going to have more and more sensors as the years go on. Now, these sensors can tell us whether the component is functioning or whether it needs to be replaced. Now, some of these components are going to actually be able to test themselves. They're going to be able to report performance back to a central station that can do trending. So, for instance, we'll know that the performance of that component is somewhat less than it was last week or last month. And we'll be able to determine whether or not that component needs to be maintained, or maybe that component needs to be replaced. We're going to know all that before there's an incident, before it's absolutely needed to function properly. But what it's going to do is take a very, very reliable system, which is what fire sprinkler systems are, and make it even more reliable. And it's going to eliminate or drastically decrease the downtime in those systems. Now, there are other innovations that are coming. Electronically activated sprinklers, automated water monitors. They are used to detect fires at a much earlier stage than we typically do now. And that means you need less water. And less water is going to be critical in certain regions where there are restrictions on water use, or water is a scarce resource. And we're now going to be able to bring fire technology to those areas. Now, these and many, many more innovative concepts will make fire systems better and will make the fire protection industry stronger.
As we conclude here today, is there anything you would like to say to the members of LATAM and all of our colleagues around the entire region?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for making your communities safer, and thank you to your commitment to the ideals of the IFSA. Together, we truly will make the world a safer place.
Members of the Latin American Fire Protection Network, I say, first of all, thank you for having the courage to form your organization, because we do believe that the first and most important thing is to be able to discuss things openly and collectively in order to get the right things done. Having said that, I would say that some of the things we can't forget is that our number one responsibility is to the public. Our next responsibility is to all the businesses we protect. And if we lose sight of those two things, eventually our business will become more and more challenging, and eventually we'll see a lot of erosion. I think secondly, it's wonderful that you've made the decision you have at the time you've had. You've done it. Because frankly, you do not have to recreate history. You don't have to start from zero. You don't have to do exactly what others have done. But I think it's important to plan for the future by respecting the past. I think you should go back and leverage the history that's available. Most closely, that's our history in North America, but it's also evolved in other places in the world. Look at that history, learn from that history, and to the maximum extent you can to serve your own communities and geographies, leverage that history and create a consistent set of standards for your entire business community. As you go about getting underway, getting your organization established and respected, particularly with the public and your local governments, you are going to have to turn some adversaries into allies. You are going to have to meet with people who oppose your position as well as our positions. And I think it's important to remember that you're not alone. Those of us who are members of the International Fire Sprinkler Alliance are here to help you in any way we can. As individuals, we can attend your conferences. As an organization, we can support your efforts. And as individual manufacturers, we can come into your countries and we can help you better define some of your objectives.
After has to come from your work in developing the building codes that will make them require fire sprinklers, certified fire sprinklers. We must convince our lawmakers that a properly installed and maintained sprinkler system saves lives and property, plus it's a cost-effective solution providing significantly greater economic benefit to the community at large. Without that support, our efforts will be diverted. We need to focus on that to get the next stage of growth that we've experienced so far in this market. Thank you.
Yes, I do have a message for all those organizations over Latin America that are doing an effort to improve safety over the inhabitants of their countries, cities, and so on. First message is congratulations. You are doing a developing new regulation, new codes, new standards, adoption of the standards, new members in your organization. That's great. You need to continue doing that. We all rely on you to improve this quality of living over the region. You are doing great. Please keep that pace. Raise a hand whenever you need help. You are doing that great so far, but you don't need to be alone. Your members are great. Push them. Push them to be in a more active role, more proactive, to raise a hand whenever there's a situation to come. We are in the right track with you, with your organizations, with your members, and that's why I send you an applause. It's great. Let's go for more. Difficult times, but your team is great, and we will be succeeding in the very near future. Thank you very much for all your efforts. Great. Thank you.
FM Approvals is proud to work with your organizations to promote the use of fire sprinklers to make the world a safer and more resilient place. And we want to thank each and every one of you for your efforts. Now, the dedication of your membership, effort you expend to raise the awareness of sprinklers, to try to get sprinklers mandated in building codes, means that the use of sprinklers in the region will significantly increase. Now, it's a long road and it's got a lot of twists and turns, but your ability to continuously make progress is very, very impressive. Now, FM Approvals will continue to support your efforts in any way we can. I'd like to thank you once again for allowing me to participate in this panel.
Bom, pessoal, esse foi o vídeo, né, do pessoal das grandes multinacionais aí, cofundadoras aí da ABSpk e responsáveis por muita coisa do que acontece. Todas essas empresas que vocês viram aí fazem parte do board da IFSA e ajudam e contribuem aí para que a gente, associações latino-americanas, juntamente com a IFSA, trabalhem para fomentar a utilização de sistema de sprinklers e melhorar códigos e regulamentos, códigos e normas em toda a América Latina. Paul, I was just saying that those are the guys who are part of the board on IFSA and who, together with the local players in each of our countries, the Latin America
of the board of IF sprinkler industry, not only in Brazil, but around the world.
Yeah, for sure. Continue. You can count on us anytime you want. We are here to help you in this new job. It just started, and then the COVID came, and we just know each. I've just introduced are in the board, ABSpk board as well, that can help you anytime you want to understand how the things happen in Brazil, and we have IFSA as a great partner and great institution, association that can make the things even better in our countries. Thank you very much for your time, for your presentation, for gathering, putting together all these guys in the same video, answering some important questions, and bringing Russ to give us the great presentation that we just saw. Thank you very much, Paul.
Very welcome.
Really appreciate your time.
You're very, very welcome. Look forward to working with you.
To continue on the website and watch the amazing side-by-side burn, and we are here. Let us know, and thank you very much again.
Thank you again. Everyone have a great weekend. Stay safe and stay healthy.
You too, the same. Pessoal, vamos assistir agora o side-by-side. Eu estava despedindo do Paul, colocando à disposição a ABSpk para tudo que ele precisar nessa nova carreira junto à IFSA como gerente full-time. Ele entrou e não teve nem tempo de se reunir direito, nem com o board da IFSA, quanto menos com nós mesmos, com nós das associações, mas que a gente está à disposição e a gente sabe que a IFSA também está, né, com força total para ajudar a continuar melhorando normas e legislação nos nossos países, especialmente no Brasil. E agora a gente vai para o side by side. Desculpa, a gente está um pouco acima bastante acima do tempo. Side que decidimos gravar hoje pela manhã, ao invés de trazer ao vivo, como era a programação inicial, porque eu estou sabendo que está caindo uma tempestade em algumas regiões de São Paulo e teria falhado. Seria aqui uma demonstração de Paiva esteve lá hoje pela manhã, gravou, e com vocês agora o Paiva apresentando o Side by Side. Valeu, até já!
Boa tarde, sou José Paiva, gerente da ABSpk, Associação Brasileira de Sprinklers. Hoje nós vamos fazer um ensaio side by side intensa, uma programação técnica e uma programação voltada para o público. Muitas atividades, uma plataforma. A gente deveria ter feito esse ensaio em março da pandemia. Nós estamos fazendo agora em novembro, de forma remota. Normalmente nós temos 100, 200 pessoas presentes nesse ensaio. A presença dá um impacto maior em função da própria propagação do calor que o ensaio gera. Eu queria O nosso objetivo é avaliar como materiais que a gente encontra habitualmente, qualquer material participantes desse ensaio. Um ambiente sem proteção por sprinkler. Foram um tipo de artifício, nada disso. Agora nós vamos mostrar aqui um outro ambiente, esse sim protegido por ele realmente funcione. A função do sprinkler é controlar o incêndio. O sprinkler, né? Então, vamos mostrar aqui. É absolutamente materiais. Estou usando um sprinkler certificado de resposta padrão e estamos usando a tubulação de CPVC. Ela inclusive está aparente porque ela não precisa ficar oculta, né? Ela tem uma resistência enorme ao fogo, podendo ficar aparente sem nenhum problema. Poderíamos estar usando também tubulação de aço, que também é bastante comum no mercado. Então nós vamos dar a volta agora para fazer uma demonstração de também como é que é o sistema de sprinkler na parte que a população em geral não vê, né? Que é a tubulação, a conexão. Então aqui nós temos a tubulação, tem conexões tupi, tem a tubulação de CPVC da Amanco, com matéria-prima da Lubrizol. Aí, está com uma pressão de 3, 4 quilos. O sprinkler é super importante. Infelizmente temos visto bastantes incêndios em diversos tipos de edificações e ocupações. Tá bom? O incêndio, então, o ensaio nós vamos... Vocês verão, prestem atenção, que em até 1 minuto o sprinkler deverá entrar em funcionamento, contendo o incêndio. E o outro ambiente, num intervalo de 3, 4 até 5 minutos, vai entrar em flashover e ele será consumido inteiramente. Tá bom? Então, a partir de agora, vou pedir para a equipe do IPT começar o ensaio e espero que tudo dê certo, né? Tem dado certo, esse será o 8º ensaio que a gente vai fazer e a confiabilidade do sprinkler é 100%, né? Sempre funcionou. Vamos lá então. Muito bem, então ainda está começando a ser provocado. O incêndio normalmente, e até comum, começa numa lixeira, por isso está começando a sair uma fumacinha, né? Infelizmente a gente não percebe o incêndio de fato acontecendo quando ele começa. Né? Com aproximadamente 1 minuto, o sprinkler foi acionado e o sistema está protegido. Agora vamos ver como evoluirá o fogo no outro ambiente que não está protegido por sprinkler. Infelizmente, nos últimos tempos temos visto incêndio em diversas ocupações, inclusive em hospitais, né? Muitos hospitais aí com mortos que estavam em centro de recuperação intensiva. Temos visto incêndio em diversos galpões, geralmente com pouca consequência em termos de mortes, mas com grande perda de incêndios em edifícios históricos, museus, um patrimônio que é irrecuperável, enfim, perdas diversas. Agora, vejam só a evolução do incêndio. Já temos a fumaça se concentrando no topo do módulo. Nessa altura, tanto pela questão da fumaça como pela questão do calor, isso já não estaria mais habitável. Né? Então, aqui com 3, 4 minutos, de incêndio, nenhum corpo de bombeiro consegue chegar e fazer a extinção do fogo. do fogo. Agora nós vamos fazer a contenção do incêndio, mas a gente poderia deixar esse módulo aí até ele ser totalmente consumido. Agora vamos fazer a contenção do incêndio. Muito bem. Após a realização do ensaio, nós vamos poder verificar como ficou o incêndio e o módulo após a ocorrência. Devastadoras e é realmente assustador. Nós da área de Sprinklers costumamos dizer que o Sprinkler é o melhor amigo do bombeiro, tanto civil como militar, porque o bombeiro fica protegido e fica isento de ter que se arriscar para combater o fogo. Muito bem, nós desligamos lá o sprinkler porque o fogo já estava contido. E não havia mais necessidade de ficar com o consumo de água. Então, daqui a pouco nós vamos poder verificar como ficou o ensaio. Como ficou o ambiente, né, totalmente consumido. Então já fomos liberados aqui pela Brigada de Incêndio para verificar aqui o ambiente. Sobrou parte da estrutura só do sofá, mesa e cadeira carbonizada. Não sobrou mais nada aqui no ambiente, né? Realmente terra devastada aqui. Se a gente tivesse deixado o ambiente prosseguir no fogo aqui, isso tudo ruiria, né? Então, vidas e patrimônio 100% perdido nesse ambiente. Aqui, nós temos um ambiente absolutamente íntegro. Vou pedir para o pessoal fazer uma tomada aqui do ambiente, se possível, para mostrar que, inclusive, há partes aqui do sofá que nem foram atingidas. É possível vir com uma câmera aqui? Então vamos mostrar aqui, ó, o ambiente, né, totalmente controlado. Tem partes do sofá aqui que ainda nem pegaram, nem se molharam, né? Todos os equipamentos aqui, apesar de molhados, estão preservados. Se tivesse documento aqui, ele estaria preservado. Vidas preservadas. Aqui, vamos fazer aqui uma tomada do sprinkler já aberto, né? Funcionando perfeitamente. Né? O sprinkler é que nem o fósforo. Uma vez usado, ele não pode ser reaproveitado. O sprinkler é especialmente interessante porque ele independe da ação do homem. Mesmo que não haja ninguém no ambiente, o sprinkler é acionado. Se é um estabelecimento comercial, no dia seguinte é possível retomar suas atividades sem nenhum prejuízo. Não tem nenhuma espécie de lucro cessante. O nome da empresa não vai parar nas mídias impressas e televisivas e radiofônicas, nem nada disso. Enfim, mais uma vez, temos um evento com sucesso. Gostaria de reiterar aqui os nossos agradecimentos ao IPT, aos nossos patrocinadores desse evento, a Amanco Lubrizol, a Sênior Engenharia e a Tupi Conexões. Gostaria de agradecer o pessoal do IPT, que ao longo de toda a semana se empenhou na disponibilização da estrutura, disponibilização da equipe, de recursos, de local. Ao longo da semana toda, a gente pudesse entregar para a comunidade de segurança contra incêndio este evento. E também ao Gilberto da Tupi, que nos ajudou aqui na montagem. Eu espero não ter esquecido de ninguém. E espero que no ano que vem, quando a gente faça outro evento, a gente possa fazê-lo com o público, né? Espero que todos no Brasil e no mundo já estejam livres dessa pandemia. Tá bem? Então, muito obrigado. Fico feliz aqui com o sucesso. Realmente, nenhum tipo de receio, porque a gente tem 100% de confiança no sistema de sprinklers. Muito obrigado.
Gostado aí do side by side. A gente, como eu falei anteriormente, sabiamente fizemos a transmissão pela manhã, porque a tempestade que está caindo acho que teria impossibilitado. E assim chegamos ao fim do nosso evento, essa semana inteira de palestras que vocês aproveitaram. E queria deixar o aviso de que todas as palestras oficiais do evento na parte da tarde estão gravadas e disponíveis. É só clicar na plenária no dia, no primeiro item da agenda, que vocês vão poder assistir na íntegra. E ela ficará disponível nessa plataforma, nesse website, por mais uma semana. Então, aproveitem que está todo aí para vocês. O evento foi feito com carinho para todos vocês. E com isso, a gente termina. Eu queria agradecer a todo mundo que participou e fez possível esse evento, né? Em especial a todos esses que estão na tela com vocês, né? A nossa diretoria, Paiva, Roseli, então a Diana, o João, o Paiva, a Roseli, o Rafael Turri, a ECOA, que é a agência que fez tudo isso acontecer, né? São os mágicos por trás, nos bastidores aí, que fizeram toda essa plataforma ser possível, com essa aparência, com esse layout, com essa interatividade. E aí, para citar alguns nomes, né? Obrigado, Moncler, de verdade, do fundo do meu coração. Lu, aquela que atendeu milhares de telefonemas meus durante essas últimas semanas, pedindo coisas e fazendo a coisa acontecer. Eduardo, que estava por trás de toda a programação, e a sua equipe, que fez a tudo ser possível. Samuel, que foi o streamer, o mago por trás do áudio e vídeo aqui da Plenária 1, desde o primeiro dia. Tairan, também da Plenária 2, que fez a mágica por trás de todo o áudio e vídeo da Plenária 2. César Manes também, que esteve envolvido com a gente no começo, nas primeiras reuniões, e eu sei que também, por trás de tudo isso, por trás dessa empresa maravilhosa, fez esse evento acontecer. De verdade, gente, obrigado de coração. Queria agradecer também a todos os patrocinadores que também fizeram acontecer esse evento, e são eles Alvenius, né? Dinâmica, EcoSafety, FM Approvals, FM Global, Gamma Fire, GMAC, GFSA, IP Consultoria, Protectotec, Reliable, Releva Detecta, Instituto Sprinkler Brasil, CIPEC, Tupi, Taiko e Viking. Né? Vocês também engrandeceram, fizeram o evento ser possível, engrandeceram com as suas palestras todos os dias de manhã, com estandes para visitação. Obrigado, né? Com a ajuda de vocês, com o patrocínio de vocês, esse evento se tornou possível e se tornou público e gratuito para todo mundo. Queria agradecer também um agradecimento especial ao nosso co-organizador, o IPT, né, que desde o princípio, desde o final de 2019, comprou a ideia de fazer o evento ao vivo, disponibilizou a localidade de ser feito em março, lá, presencial. Infelizmente não aconteceu, mas não largou a mão e continuou com a gente até o final, fazendo esse evento aqui com a gente, tornando possível, cedendo o espaço, filmando os testes, disponibilizando o espaço para acontecer o Side by Side. Muito obrigado, PT, especialmente Berto e ao Davis, que nos ajudaram bastante e deram o ar da graça nessa semana. Agradecer a IFSA, né, que já agradeci agora há pouco, ao Paul, ao Russ e a todo o board da IFSA, que também ajudou com o vídeo, né, e sempre ajudou a ABSpk em todos os eventos. Agradecer a PCI LATAM e a todos os membros e todas as associações latino-americanas também, que participaram no dia de hoje, né, e contribuíram e contribuem para a melhoria da proteção contra incêndio na América Latina. E assim eu vou me despedindo. Queria deixar um recado. O Paiva falou aqui no finalzinho do vídeo de que recebi uma ligação aqui, mas já neguei, que aqui no finalzinho do vídeo ele falou que o Sprinkler está lá disponível o tempo inteiro, mesmo sem ninguém. Eu gosto de trazer sempre, falei algumas vezes no evento, que o Sprinkler é como um bombeiro 24 horas por dia, 7 dias por semana, disponível na sua ocupação, no seu empreendimento, pronto para funcionar e controlar o fogo no início. Tá? Para isso é importante prestar atenção desde o início, desde o projeto, a instalação, e manter um sistema bem inspecionado, testado regularmente e bem mantido para que não aconteçam falhas. É mais do que conhecido que o Sprinkler é eficiente e eficaz no combate, desde que esses principais pontos aí, projeto, instalação, manutenção com produtos certificados, estejam bem colocados. Tá, me despeço aqui, deixo aberto espaço aí para os demais amigos e diretores, comissão organizadora desse evento, se quiser falar alguma palavra, fiquem à vontade. Tchau, obrigado por tudo, gente. Até mais.
Bom, eu queria dar uma palavrinha rápida, agradecer a todo mundo pela participação, agradecer os patrocinadores e agradecer toda a equipe que fez esse evento acontecer da forma que aconteceu. O que o Felipe falou num dado momento, ele falou, a gente não conhece isso, é muito difícil a gente atuar, né? A gente, para fazer um congresso, é muito simples hoje, porque todo mundo conhece congresso, mas um seminário virtual foi uma coisa que demandou muito deles. Eu tive participações pontuais, não participei muito ativamente, eu não sou internética, mas gostei muito, foi lindo o evento, tudo aconteceu na hora certa, como tinha que acontecer, melhor que o presencial dá uns atrasos. E é isso, gente. Estou muito satisfeita com o resultado e espero que todos tenham ficado satisfeitos também. Obrigada mais uma vez.
Diana e Felipe Melo, né? Faço da palavra de vocês as minhas palavras também. E gostaria de registrar, né, que é um prazer muito grande fazer parte desse time, fazer parte dessa diretoria, que são amigos, né, de longa data e que comungam dos mesmos sentimentos que meus, né? Então, um sentimento de que nós somos parte da cadeia de sprinklers do Brasil, uma parte importante, e as pessoas esperam sempre de nós coisas novas, coisas diferentes, soluções novas. E cada vez mais a tarefa vai ficando mais difícil. Como o Felipe Melo falou no começo do dia de hoje, no início da reunião, né? A ABSpk vai fazer 10 anos, né, Felipe? E há 10 anos atrás a gente tinha uma visão. Hoje a gente tem outra, mas o que a gente percebe que nesses 10 anos a ABSpk tomou uma importância muito grande no mercado nacional. E essa importância nos traz responsabilidades. E no momento de pandemia, onde a gente gostaria de estar fazendo inúmeros eventos presenciais, treinamentos, queimas, o próprio seminário, foi a forma que nós encontramos de estar próximo de todos vocês, e foi a forma da gente manter o padrão ABSpk de eventos, de assuntos, de informações. Então, eu agradeço muito a equipe da ECOA, a diretoria como um todo que trabalhou, o Paiva, a Roseli, todos, né, que contribuíram, os palestrantes, muitos deles aí tiveram pouco tempo para montar as suas apresentações, né? Do fundo do coração, muito obrigado. Vocês fizeram parte da história da ABSpk, e esse evento entrou para a história. Eu tenho certeza que agora a gente tem 2 problemas para resolver: congresso e seminário. E não adianta falar que com o seminário não vai existir mais os congressos, porque não vai ser assim, as pessoas já não aceitam isso mais. Então, assim, é um filho que a gente acabou de pôr no mundo e que a gente vai ter que embalar e cuidar dele. As próximas gerações estão vindo aí, daqui a um tempo nós vamos ser substituídos por pessoas mais jovens que já nasceram na internet, né? E o legado que a gente tem que deixar para elas é que a técnica, a engenharia, ela nunca substitui a tecnologia. Então, os conceitos, as informações, elas têm que ser difundidas ao longo dos anos. Muito obrigado, pessoal. Passo a palavra para vocês aí.
Então, minha vez agora. Gostaria também de fazer minhas palavras da Diana, do João, do Felipe. Foram aí semanas muito intensas, trabalho aos sábados, aos domingos. Nesses últimos dias aí a gente brigou, se desentendeu, se juntou novamente, tudo com o objetivo de fazer esse seminário ser um sucesso. E sem dúvida ele foi. O feedback que eu tenho recebido de diversas pessoas é excelente, todos gostaram. E sem dúvida, como o João falou, isso fica como um legado. A ABSpk tem cada vez mais se renovado, e os nossos novos aí pilares estratégicos, né, sem dúvida vai ser a educação por meio das mídias, né, por meio da internet, como nós fizemos agora nesse seminário. Então, eu agradeço também poder ter participado dessa equipe. Sou um membro mais novo, mas já me sinto muito feliz de poder trabalhar com vocês. Um grande abraço a todos, um parabéns especial também para o Paiva e para a Roseli, que trabalharam muito essas semanas. Todos nós, né? Todo programa servindo.
Muito bem. Eu me sinto muito honrado em poder participar dessa equipe multidisciplinar, cada um com suas competências complementares. Aí a gente realmente obteve êxito em função de todo mundo poder atuar na sua área e chegar a um resultado satisfatório. nesses meus 7 anos aqui de ABSpk, que eu completei agora em novembro, eu fico muito feliz de sempre ter tido o apoio da diretoria e, em especial, essa diretoria aqui, que conta com ex-presidentes, ex-diretores, também fazendo um trabalho já contínuo. É sempre uma motivação grande poder trabalhar todo dia aqui com vocês, tá bom? Eu convido a todos para fazerem parte aqui da comunidade técnica e de mercado da ABSpk. Quem não é associado ainda, venha fazer parte e, principalmente, venha nos ajudar a desenvolver esses trabalhos e fazer com que o mercado se desenvolva. Muito obrigado a todos.
Roseli, faltou você, quer dar alguma palavra?
Eu gostaria de agradecer a todos por essa semana maravilhosa, que incomodou muita gente. Eu acho que esse trabalho é maravilhoso, esse incômodo é importante para todo mundo, nível mundial. Não estão todos aqui, mas poderiam estar e quem sabe estarão nos próximos. E dizer que a ABSpk é uma casa especial, maravilhosa, onde todos são bem-vindos. Agradeço a diretoria, agradeço especialmente ao Paiva por estar aqui. Agradeço a todos. É só isso que eu quero dizer. Foi ótimo fazer esse trabalho com vocês. Obrigado.
Obrigado, gente. Obrigado. Rô, não se esconde mais, tá? Na próxima você vai ser moderadora. Eu queria fazer 2 pedidos só. Uma pose, todo mundo, para a foto oficial da comissão organizadora. Alguém, por favor, printa a tela aí. Não adianta pentear o cabelo, não, Rafa. Tá bom assim. Uma foto aí, alguém printa a tela. 1, 2 e...
Peraí.
E é isso, gente. Uma salva de palmas aí para todo mundo, que foi sensacional.
Parabéns.
Valeu, parabéns.
Parabéns a todos nós.
Valeu, gente.
Até gente. Beijos.
Até, obrigada. Beijos.
Um abraço, pessoal. Até mais.